Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Head of the Economic of Development Program, Dr. Herman Cahyodiarto, SEMP. We respect our speakers at today's event, Prof. Dr. Taufik, M.Sc, and Dr. Mohamed Aslam bin Gulam Hassan. Dear moderator of today's webinar, Mr. Mohammad Zeqi Yasin, SEMSC. We respect the lecturers and invited guests and all the participants of the international virtual course today that I am proud of. Peace be upon you, and Allah mercy and blessings. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, best wishes and peace to all of us. Good morning to all the happy attendees of this wonderful international virtual course event. Praise and gratitude for the presence of God Almighty for having given us the gift of health in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, so that we can gather virtually at the International Virtual Course event by Development Economics Program, University of Jember, with the theme Natural Resource as Driven Economic. Please allow me, Aulia Pamasa Setiyantono, as the Master of Ceremony in today's International Virtual Course to read out the schedule of event first. Number 1, opening. Number 2, main event. Number 3, documentation and closing. Entering the first event, namely the opening, let's open this webinar together by reading Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Entering the second event, namely singing the... Entering the next event, namely the main event, namely the presentation of material from a very extraordinary resource person, and will be guided by our moderator, Mr. Mohammad Zeqi Yasin, SA M.Sc. And first of all, allow me to read the curriculum vitae from Mr. Mohammad Zeqi Yasin, SA M.Sc. Here is a CV from our moderator. Here is the CV of Mr. Mohammad Zeqi Yasin. He pursued his education at Master of Science in Applied Economics and Data Analysis at University of Essex, United Kingdom. And also Bachelor of Economics in Development Economics at University of Erlangga, Indonesia. For the employment history, he is at the Department of Economics, University of Jember, Indonesia as lecturer, and also Research Institute of Socio-Economic Development, RISE, Indonesia as head of research. For the organization experience, for the research outputs, here are some of his publications. For point A, here is Yasin, MZ, and Sari DW 2020, Foreign Direct Investment Efficiency and Total Factor Productivity, does the R&D intensity classification matter at Economic Journal of Emerging Market. For the rest of the curriculum vitae, you can see here at the curriculum vitae. Now we have arrived at the core event of the International Virtual Course by Development Economics Program, University of Jember, with the theme Natural Resource as Driven Economic, which of course all of us have been waiting for. Furthermore, I will leave this forum to the moderator to guide the course of today's discussion. To Mr. Mohammad Zeqi Yasin, I invite you.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Okay, let me introduce myself again, because this is the second day of our international lecture course. So my name is Mohammad Zeqi Yasin. I'm the lecturer of Department of Economics, University of Jember. And today, in the second day, I'm in charge as a moderator in the discussion today. And as scheduled by the committee, we have also two remarkable speakers for today, like yesterday. And our first speaker is Professor Taufik. And our second speaker is Dr. Mohamed Aslam bin Gulam Hassan. Okay. Maybe I'd like to check Professor Taufik, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Professor. And for Dr. Aslam? Hello?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aslam, for attending the event. All right, beforehand, I'd like to read the curriculum vitae of our first speaker today. So, okay, pardon me. Okay, Professor Taufik pursued his doctoral degree from the Cleveland State University in May 1999 and gained the Doctor of Engineering in the Electrical Engineering Department and gained his Master of Science from the University of Illinois at Chicago in May 1995 and pursue his Bachelor of Science from the Northern Arizona University in May 1993. And currently he is the senior member of Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and also the member of American Society of Engineering Education. And beforehand, he has academic experience that is still occur until now as the professor of electrical engineering from the Cal Poly State University from California, USA, and also the director of Electric Power Institute for Cal Poly State University, California, USA. And he also has published several papers for, I found there are a lot of things, but I like to read the latest one. For the peer-reviewed journals, he has published a paper entitled A Fuzzy Supervisory Scalar Control for a Matrix Converter Induction. And also for matrix converter induction, that has been published in 2021. And the second one is the new MPPT algorithm for photovoltaic power generation under uniform and partial shading condition that has been published in 2021. And for the books, he also has published a book entitled ICOSI, entitled ICOSI 2014 for the proceeding of the second International Conference on Sustainable Innovation that has been published by the Springer in 2016. All right, so for Professor Taufik, will deliver the materials about the DC electricity for future homes and off-grid electrical system. So Professor Taufik.
So do I start now?
Yeah, you may start.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I lost you there for a second. Thank you for a very nice introduction. Appreciate it. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to all. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. It's an honor to be given a chance to share my interest, my research, and my vision in terms of future technology related to renewable energy. And I can see the theme for this lecture is on natural resources, and I was invited to give a talk on the technological aspect of renewable energy as part of the natural resources. And I am by no means have any background in economy or economics. And so as you can see from the CV, my training has been in the engineering field, specifically in electrical engineer. And so again, it's a great honor to be here. And this is actually the second, maybe the third time I've been invited by Jember University. I actually visited the campus at least twice in the past, physically, before pandemic. Went to visit the electrical engineering department there. And so again, I'm happy to be back here, and really a pleasure to meet all of you and introduce myself. And hopefully this will be the start of fruitful collaboration or partnership between myself and any of you out there from either Jember University or any other university. So thank you again for inviting me. May I know how much time do I have for my presentation?
It's about 90 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's
maybe
quite a long time.
maybe less or more because we have the discussion session afterwards.
Okay, so that includes Q&A, yes?
No, I mean like 90 minutes, and afterwards we will hear the deliver from the second speaker, and also afterward we will have the discussion session. Maybe if you I mean, like if you left more time, we can have more time for discussion from the audience.
I see.
Yes.
I doubt I will need 90 minutes. I think that's a long time already. I try to be brief, and then hopefully it'll be something that we all can learn from each other. All right. Is there okay if I share my screen for now? Can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Can you all see the presentation, the full screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Again, my name is Taufik. I am, as you already know, originally from Indonesia. I was born and raised in Jakarta, and I migrated to the US back in 1989. Did my schooling there for 10 years before I took the job as a faculty member in the electrical engineering department at Cal Poly State University. In 1999, that's when I started. So I've been teaching there for almost 23 years. Currently, I am a director of Electric Power Institute, which is one of the research centers at Cal Poly. And I'm also right now hold the position as a chair of Power and Energy Society, IEEE, of Central Coast Section in California, USA. My talk today is going to be on, as I said earlier, on the technological side of natural resources related to my field. So my apology if it's going to be quite technical, but I'm going to try to explain it in such a way that hopefully you can easily follow. Right? So this is a topic that has been my passion, my interest, and I believe this will be the way of the future, especially for residential electrical system. Right? Has to do with the type of electricity that we are using, and so I'm glad that I get the chance to share with this community, because I really do need help in terms of having somebody to look into the economics of this technology, right? So from the technological side, I know this is beneficial, but I am missing the economic study of this technology that I believe is going to be the way of the future. So again, the title of my presentation is called DC Electricity for Future Homes and Off-Grid Electrical System. Just to introduce my institution, the name is Cal Poly State University, but if you ever visit the US, or especially California, our school is known as Cal Poly. Originated as a polytechnic school back in 1901, but then it was converted to a full institution, full university in 1972. So we are university now, and by the way, there is no longer any polytechnic college anymore in the US. So every single university in the US has been converted from polytechnic to university, including Cal Poly. That's why you see the name university, because I've been asked many times, how could you have a polytechnic and university at the same time? Well, it is different here in the US. We still carry the name Polytechnic because that's where we came from, and people already know us by the name Cal Poly, so we don't want to change the name. Right? And these are the colleges that we have under Cal Poly. Our campus has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different colleges. And as you can see, College of Engineering is the largest. We also have the College of Business. That's where we have the economics major, accounting, and so on and so forth, right? About 3,000 students. We are part of the California State University campuses. There are 23 campuses, so we are one of them. Total population of our campus is about 22,000, about 1,473 faculty members. And in terms of the location, here's the US on the upper right-hand corner. And you can see we are in California, which is on the West Coast right there, right? So close to the Pacific Ocean. And if you zoom into California, you can see that our campus is actually really close to the beach, right? Right here. The name is San Luis Obispo. The city name is San Luis Obispo. So not far from the beach. And it is also in between two industrial areas. To the north of us, we have the Silicon Valley. To the south of us, we have the Southern California, right? And so we are in between those two industries. Right? So hopefully in the future, you get to visit us, because here's the picture of our beautiful campus. You can see surrounded by hills, rolling hills, right? And again, it's not too far from the beach. So on one side, we have the rolling hills. On the other side, we have the beach, right? So these are the buildings on campus, and yeah, hopefully someday you get to visit our campus and let me know so I can take you around. We have had several visitors from Indonesia and Malaysia, as well as other countries, from Philippines, as well as Thailand, visiting myself as a visiting scholars. So it is a possible arrangement. We have had 3 undergraduate students from the Philippines, and then we have 6 PhD students from Indonesia, 1 PhD student from Malaysia, 2 from Thailand. We already have the one in Philippines, 1 Fulbright scholar from Indonesia, and also we have some visits in the past from several universities in Indonesia, such as Gajah Mada University, and then Institute of Technology, 10 November, UNPAD, and so on and so forth. Here's some pictures of our visitors in the past. The last one before pandemic is this one at the bottom right there. We have a group of faculty members from ITS, Institute of Technology, 10 November, from Surabaya, visiting me. And then we have this Dr. Oni from Brawijaya visiting us for 3 months, I believe. And there's Dr. Abu Bakar from Malaysia, also visiting for three months. All right, that's enough introducing our institution. I'd like to go straight to our presentation, or my presentation. Here's the outline. So I'm going to talk about several things: why DC, rethinking with DC House, and then DC House components, DC house network for off-grid system, future houses with hybrid AC/DC system, and I'm going to close it down with a summary of my presentation. So first, why DC, right? Maybe I should also mention first, DC versus AC, that has been going on for a long time. There's a battle between DC electricity and AC electricity. AC electricity is what we are most commonly using, right? That's the type of electricity that goes back and forth between positive and negative, right? So it's a sine wave, if you will, sinusoidal waveform. That's ideally what we have for AC, but there is also another option, right? We don't have to use AC electricity for our house. We could also use DC, or our loads, I should say. We could also have DC. DC is just flat, right? It's not fluctuation. There's no fluctuation. It's flat, right? Ideally, it's flat. And as I mentioned earlier, these days, right? Predominantly, our electricity is of a type AC, right? So the electricity that is being provided by PLN, for example, that will be AC, right? But if we take a look at the different loads in our house, more and more of the electrical loads in our house are actually of DC type. Right? Here's an example. I have 3 examples, not just one. Right? You see smartphones, right? If this were in person presentation, I would actually ask the audience, raise your hand if you have smartphones, or if you have a cell phone. I would be sure of that almost everybody in the room would raise their hand, right? Cell phone is such a common portable device that we have today. And guess what? Cell phone internally is running off DC electricity, which is the flat electricity, right? Flat current, right? And you can see the statistic here. You can see the growing number of smartphones in the world globally, right? From 2006 to 2021, you can see that around 2 billion smartphones are in place today. Actually, by last year, right? That's not a small number, right? Now, every single smartphone consumes roughly, right? Sorry, I have to use simple math right here. Technical terms, right? We have to calculate power. That way we can calculate energy being consumed, right? So 5 volt, let's say USB times 1 amp, that's how much current is being charged. And then let's say that we charge it for 1 hour, right? Per day. So you can see that per day we consume energy from this DC, small DC portable device, but a lot of them in the world, by about 10 gigawatt hours. You can see the number of zeros right there, right? That's a lot of energy being processed through DC. Just to give you a kind of like a big picture of why DC has become more dominant these days, right? So you can see energy from one single cell phone doesn't do much, but if you think about globally, right? We consume about 10 gigawatt hours just from smartphones, right? And another thing would be tablets, right? So the same way, you can see the statistic here for tablets, the number is increasing. And then what has become more popular as well is the lightings, right? LEDs. I'm sure nowadays you can actually buy LED light bulbs, right, from hardware store, like in Indonesia, for example, right? That was not really common back in 2010, but nowadays you can basically find it anywhere, right? And you can, in fact, it would not be wise for you not to replace your light bulbs with LED, because LED is really very energy saving, right? Very efficient type of light bulb to save you energy, right? To save you electric bill every month. So it is wise for you to replace every single light bulb with LED. So again, LED is running on DC, not AC. So if you look at our house nowadays, right, we have smartphones, we have LED lights, and then we have tablets. These are three examples of DC electrical load in our house, not to mention other things such as TV, flat TVs, right, computers, laptops, right? These are all DC operated devices, right? Okay. Oh, actually, I need to do this. Pointer, that's a pointer. All right. All right, and then another reason why DC, this is because of the technological advancement in many things, including USB. I'm sure everybody here is aware of the new USB type. That's called USB Type C, right? So it used to be USB Type 3.0, right? But now more and more devices are connected through USB Type C. Now, why USB Type C? Well, one of the interesting things about USB-C is that it has many benefits, right? Many futuristic, I would say, um, goals. But one of the um, targets that I'm very interested in, being an electrical engineer, is this right here. That from USB Type C, we could actually provide as much as 100 watts from USB-C, right? Now, if you compare that with USB 3.0, the previous USB cable or USB connector, that one can only handle around, I don't know, 15 watts to 20 watts. So now with USB-C, you can actually handle more power. Now imagine if a USB-C can handle 100 watts, then this same USB-C can actually power many things in our house. It could power this TV, it could power even a small refrigerator, it could power many things, right? And these are all DC, right? USB type or USB connector is DC, not AC. Right? And here's another figure that would show you the increasing number of DC loads instead of AC loads, right? Right. So back in 2000, for example, the portion or the fraction of DC loads in our house is about 20%. But then about 2018, that increases to roughly 30%. So there's an increase of 10% mix between AC and DC. What about AC loads? What are the examples of AC loads? AC loads are typically the big loads in our house, such as washing machines, the big refrigerator, right? Air conditioning, if you have air conditioning at home, that's it's going to be AC. And that's about it, right? Those are the big loads. So typically the big loads are AC loads. Now, I would argue that for developing countries, or I would say countries such as Indonesia, right? The mix of AC and DC should be larger, right? So the DC load should be larger. Why? Because if you compare a house in the US and a house in Indonesia, for example, in the US, every single house, or it is common for every house to have very big refrigerator, because here, part of the culture is that we store food. In Indonesia, we don't really store food, right? You buy and then you cook and then you finish in a day, right? But here, people go to grocery stores and then buy food for a week. So we store food. So therefore, the refrigerator is going to be big. Same thing with the heater or air conditioning. It's going to be bigger than the one at a common house in Indonesia. So therefore, I would argue that in Indonesia, country like Indonesia, for example, the mix of DC would be bigger than what you see here compared to the US. Now, again, why DC? It has to do with efficiency, right? Or in this case, energy usage. If you can save energy, right? If you can use less energy while using these devices, then you can save electric bill. You can actually pay less money every month to PLN, right? Pay less utility bills, right? And the way we have it right now is that you have this wall socket, right? That gives you AC, right? You can see this is wall socket in the US. It looks like this. In Indonesia, it looks different. but in the US looks like this, right? But it's the same idea. You have AC power from the wall, from the utility, from PLN in Indonesia. And then let's say you're charging the smartphone and you put it, you plug in this adapter, right? We call it a charger, right? And this adapter converts AC to DC, okay? Converts AC to DC. So it has to, because again, our smartphones, right, is running DC inside, whereas the source is AC. So here's the shape right there. There you go. So the shape of the current from the wall plug, from the wall socket, is a sine wave. But then the current that is required in our smartphone is flat. So in order to convert from fluctuation, sine wave to flat, we have to have a circuit, right? Some kind of a system to convert from AC to DC. And that would introduce between 17 to 35% loss. That's, well, maybe you're thinking, that's not really bad, right? 17 to 35% loss. Well, wait a second there. It could be big. It could be significant, right? Here's a rough calculation, right? Let's say you say, okay, 17 to 35% is small. Well, what if I use 5%? That's even smaller, isn't it? 17 to 35 is, if you think that's small, what about 5? That's even smaller. Well, let's check this out. Let's say that the percent loss is 5%. Let's just say, right? And then every tablet, so let's say I'm charging a tablet. Every tablet consumes about 12 kilowatt hour per year, and there are about 760 million tablets per 2016. So 5% times 12 kilowatt hour per year times 760 million, that gives you this number right here, 480 gigawatt hour per year. Is that a small number? I beg the difference, right? So you see that 480 gigawatt, that's a lot of zeros again, right? That's what, 9 zeros? That's a lot of energy being lost, basically, right? Energy that is wasted, not lost, but wasted, right? Because of this 5%. If I do the same thing for smartphone, right, then the number becomes 599 gigawatt hour per year. That's a lot of gigawatt hour, a lot of energy being wasted, right? So you can see that even with 5%, the implication would be huge. So imagine if it's 17% to 35%, right? And so these numbers right here, 480 gigawatt hour per year plus 599 gigawatt hour per year, that is equivalent to having 12 power plants, 12 units of 10 megawatts power plants operating 24/7 for the entire year. Now you don't think this is going to be small anymore, right? Because these numbers just from smartphones and tablet is equivalent to having 12 power plants, right? So that should give you, a different perspective on percent loss, right? 5%, 17%, that's not small anymore, right? It can become big. So that's another reason why I think we need to move to DC, or at least a portion of it to DC. Now, another reason why I think DC becomes more important these days, because as you know, more and more people are using solar panels. This is actually something that I can observe in the US. More and more houses in the US have solar panels. In fact, in California, state of California, every new house that is being constructed must have solar panel, So therefore, you'll see more and more solar panels are being used on the rooftops in California, and the same trend occurs in other states, right? So one thing that you need to know is that solar panel outputs DC; they don't output AC, right? So when you receive the energy from the sunlight, the output of the solar panel is actually DC, not AC, right? So therefore, you have a DC source at your fingertips, right? So now you have AC source from PLN, and then you have DC source from solar panel. Now, if you have a DC source, then it would be wise, it would be good, right? If I have a DC to DC converter that would provide power to our DC loads, rather than what we're doing now. This is what we're doing now right here. the one at the bottom, the diagram at the bottom, this is what we're doing now. If you have a solar panel, then you convert the DC to AC. That's going to give you about 25% loss. And then from AC, if you have DC loads, from that AC, you have to convert it back to DC with about 17 to 35% loss. And then once you get the DC, then the DC has to be matched with the DC loads. That's another DC to DC conversion right there. That gives you about maybe 5 to 10% loss. So it is silly, isn't it? It's silly to do this. That if you have a DC source, why do you have to go through these different stages to power your smartphones? Why not just go straight, right, with just one system to go through? That way you can save a lot of energy, right? You're not wasting a lot of energy by doing that. And then you can pay less money for PLN, right? Okay, so then another reason why DC, because that gives us opportunities to develop alternative solution to the less fortunate, meaning we still have brothers and sisters, right, living in rural areas, remote islands, or geographically hard to reach areas from the power grid, right, such as villages, remote villages, what have you. And these people, they don't get any electricity like we do in big cities, right? Ironically, these areas, majority of them have renewable energy around them, right? Renewable energy around them that we can convert to electricity. So it is really ironic to see that our brothers and sisters living in remote areas, they do have renewable energy around them, but there is no appropriate technology to actually able to provide or to convert energy around them into electricity to have them enjoy, right, the benefits of electricity, right? And you can see clearly from this picture, satellite picture, that there's still a lot of islands, right, big islands included in Indonesia that are lack of electricity, right, that lack electricity. So we have golden opportunities, right, to help these people, right, by providing new ways, right, new ways to provide electricity to them, right? So this is the motivation, right? Improve DC solution for off-grid rural electrification. So no need for big hydropower or wind generator. That's what we are mostly doing these days, right? If you talk about renewable energy for rural areas, typically people speak of, you know, big micro hydro or wind farm, right? There's nothing bad about it, but I have my own belief that we should also provide alternative technology, because for some areas, micro hydro is not going to fit. For some areas, wind farm is not going to work, right? So we should have alternative technology to convert or provide electricity to these people, right? So much simpler lighting system, that would be the minimum, right? You can see the picture here. I remember when I was growing up, I was still using kerosene lamp right there, right? And then it'd be nice to be able to replace this with LED light. That way it's going to be much healthier, right? Because this kerosene lamp is not really healthy, right? It's dangerous, right? You inhale some dangerous chemicals, right? By putting this kerosene lamp. So again, that would make my day if I can put some smiles on kids, you know, faces somewhere in remote areas, right? But again, we have to provide the proper technology. So that's what I'm offering with this presentation is alternative technology for rural electrification as well as future house. All right. So what is DC house? This is the project that I've been doing since 2010. My goal is to develop an alternative solution to existing rural electrification technologies, as well as for future homes, right? In order to do so, we need to be able to directly use DC electricity with DC loads, and that would provide seamless integration of one or more small scale. So the keywords here is small scale renewable energy sources. So I don't really I'm not really interested in the big scale, such as micro hydro or wind wind farm. Nothing bad about it. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying that we need to complement the technology with a technology that could facilitate small-scale renewable energy sources. And I am not claiming that this is my idea, because what I'm doing here is expanding previous ideas from a long time ago, like when we had Edison, Thomas Alva Edison, when he invented DC. So I'm just expanding his idea to use it for leverage, basically to leverage renewable energy sources, right? And I'm doing bottom-up approach rather than top-down, right? That's what we are doing now, is top-down with big micro hydro and big wind farm. I'm doing the opposite. I'm doing bottom-up, so we can offer electricity from the smallest scale. It could be just a solar lighting box, or I could offer it in terms of as an increased level, which is residential scale, basically electrical system for a house, in which we can have a standalone off the grid house, or we can do a bigger scale where the system could be used to network locally powered DC houses. I'll go over that pretty soon. So again, my philosophy in providing electricity to remote areas, villages, remote islands, right, mountains, people living in the mountains, for example, away from electricity, is that one size doesn't fit all. It's not fair, right? In my opinion, it's not fair that we're trying to push micro hydro or wind farm to every single village. It's not gonna work, because some areas, as I said earlier, micro hydro is not gonna work. Some other areas, wind farms not gonna work, right? Many areas, they have smaller stream of waters, right? Smaller rivers. Some areas, they have small, what do you call it? Small, not small, but not much wind, right? Does it mean we cannot tap the energy from this small stream of water or small wind? No, we can still do those, right? If we think about ability to tap, right, ability to tap into this small scale energy, then we could still use them. Just because a village doesn't have a big river, it doesn't mean we cannot have hydropower systems for them, right? So again, the point here is that one size does not fit all, right? And we can do this, right? We need a technology to facilitate this small scale and more adaptive solution. So the solution that I'm offering would be reliable. Every house will have their own local energy source, scalable, power capacity to each house would be adjusted per needed basis. Multiple, every house may have more than one energy sources. Expandable, it means that you can actually expand from one house to more than one house. Reachable, meaning it doesn't have to be close to utility grid, such as from PLN, jaringan, right? Network from PLN. And then flexible could be used in conjunction with the legacy AC system to create what we call future house hybrid AC/DC. Right. So here's the diagram of the technology that I'm been looking into. It's called DC house system. This is one of the variations of it. So you can see it consists of 3 different components. This is one thing that I would ask people who are very good in economics to actually look at the economic benefit of having this technology. But as you can see, we have 3 different components: the sources or the generation, and then the interface, and then the load itself, right? And every single one of these components require technological developments, along with the people like you, people who understand the economics behind this technology, right? I only understand the technology behind this, but when it comes to economics, I need your help. So as you can see, I have here multiple sources, and keep in mind these are small. I don't need big. I just need small. So when I put hydropower, this could be a generator that you can carry in your hand, right? When I put wind power, this is not the big windmill that you see, for example. This could be just a small wind generator that you can put on the roof of your house, for example. Same thing with PV, and even human power generator, right? It doesn't have to be big. So you can actually have a bicycle, right? And you exercise on this bicycle, and then the bicycle is going to be standing still. It's not going anywhere, but the rotation of the bicycle could give you electricity enough to charge a battery, for example. So imagine if I have multiple small sources, doesn't have to be big, multiple sources. I can combine all of this energy, right? Small energy, amount of energy into a single uh, amount of energy. That's going to be bigger amount, right? Going into the house. And if you have excess of energy, you can also store it in the battery, right? Okay. And so I have this interface right here that would interface the sources with our house, DC house. And this is by itself, it's called multiple input, single output. That's why I call it miso. If you ever had miso soup, the Japanese miso soup is the same spelling, except this one is short for multiple input, single output. So you can see multiple inputs, and the output is only a single output, right? And this is a technology that by itself is very challenging to develop. And you have the DC house that has all of this DC instead of AC. Now you have DC electricity. And if you look at the generator side, there's a lot to develop here. Right? Too much for me to do. Right? That's why I've already presented this topic many times to invite academia in Indonesia as well as other countries to help develop these small scale sources, such as, remember I said earlier about the hydropower generator that's portable. That's an example. I tried 2010, but I couldn't do it because I am not a mechanical engineer. But then somebody in Europe beat me to it. This is called a lily pad, a water lily. So that's the website, waterlilyturbine.com. It looks like this, right? So you can see the hydro generator, right? It's small. You can actually carry around, and if you see a small water stream like this, you can just dip it, right? You dip it, and then you get some energy out, right? We don't need micro hydro, right? We don't need big turbines. We can have small generator, and then you collect it into a battery, right? And then you can power LED lights at night, right? Um, remember the human power? I use the example using bicycle. You can also do, for example, play park, right? Where kids can play, or not only kids, but adults can also play swing. And in the process, when they're playing, they can generate power for us. They can generate electricity for us, right? And we've done it in Cal Poly, right? On our campus, I've done it with my students, and this works. That's the picture of it, right? So we built this swing, and when we play with the swing, we can generate enough power to charge a battery, and later on we can use the energy for lights, right? Same thing with seesaw right there. That's a seesaw, right? And then here we have merry-go-round right there, right? For kids to play, and then as they are playing, then we can get the energy from them. Okay, that's just some ideas. Okay, there's sky's the limit. There's more ideas for that, but just briefly as an example. Okay, and then this next thing is yeah, the same diagram, except now I'm including research areas that we need to get into. I won't go through this in details, but we need to have some kind of a brain for the system to be able to coordinate between the source, the load, and the interface, right? And speaking of the interface, multiple input, single output, right? Right here, the box that would enable us to combine multiple sources into one. I've looked into it several times since 2010, and finally we found a solution. So alhamdulillah, on 2019, I believe, I don't remember exactly, we received a US patent, right? Right there is the MISO. That's the technology that would go into this middle box right there, right? So that circuit right there allows us to have multiple input sources and output only a single DC, right? So again, that's something that we already found the solution for And I'll be more than happy to, implement it in Indonesia if you were interested. Okay. And on the load side, there's a lot of things. Again, I won't bore you through these because these are all very technical, but there's a lot to develop here, right? For example, the wall plug, right? Remember the wall socket, right? That you have in your house from PLN, right? If the load is AC, then as you know, AC is standardized, right? When you buy something, hardware, let's say a TV or washing machines, you can just directly plug in to the wall, right? Because all of these loads are standardized. In Indonesia, for example, all the loads, electrical loads are 220 volts, right? So that's why you don't need to check. You can just plug into the wall socket, right? But imagine if I want to introduce DC loads, right? And unfortunately, one of the challenges is that DC loads are not standardized, right? So come in different voltages. So some DC loads are 5 volts, some other DC loads are 12 volts, some other ones are 24 volts. If that is the case, then should we have multiple wall sockets? That would not be wise, right? Imagine if we put 3 different sockets. How would people know where to plug in, right? So that would not be wise. So because of this problem, we came up with some ideas, right? An idea of what we call smart DC wall plug, in which this wall socket is smart enough to figure out how much DC voltage required by the load. So you can buy any DC load and you can just plug in to this DC wall plug, and the DC wall plug is smart enough to figure out what voltage it requires, right? So it's called smart DC wall plug. And that's one one version of the technology we developed that's not really optimized. That's just the beginning of it. But as you can see, there's a lot of development that you can do here, right? And in the future, we want to expand the technology to include network of DC house. Instead of just one single house, we do have villages in Indonesia that are clustered, right? With clustered homes like this. So in one village, you have some like a few, right? Several houses connected, not connected, but close to each other. And then we have another cluster, right? In a different village. Same thing here in the middle. You can see the cluster houses there as well, clustered type of houses. If that is the case, then we can network this DC house into multiple DC house network, right? So right here, basically, right? So you have a single house, and then it's, the house by itself is DC house. And then if you can make every single house a DC house, then you can connect those houses. That way they can exchange power from one to the other. So if let's say this house right here, right, the energy is out, or the solar panel broke or breaks, then this house can also get energy from its neighbor right there through this path, right? So creating a local network of DC house that would improve reliability. Here's an example of how the technology that I'm offering benefits in terms of reliability. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the current technology is bad. I'm just saying that the current technology that we are using could be improved, right? Or could be complemented by the one I'm offering. Here's what we have currently, right? Micro hydro, either micro hydro or a wind farm or a solar farm, right? Centralized, basically. We have big wind turbine or big hydro power or big solar farm, right? So everything is centralized, right? So from the centralized power plant, we send the energy into the power station, and from here we send the energy to our houses, right? This, for example, if this is a village, then we have a village of, let's say, 100 houses, and it's divided into let's say three different networks like this one, right? Versus the one that I'm offering right here on the right. Right here on the right side, we have centralized power plant. So instead of, sorry, not centralized, distributed power plant. So instead of a central power plant, every single house has a power plant. See this, right, with solar panels. So why is that a benefit? Well, what happens if, for example, if um, the hydropower generator is gone. What happens if it breaks? Then of course, all of these houses will be down, right? So blackout. Once the big power turbine is out, then all of the houses will be dark, right? Because the source is gone. What happens if the hydropower generator is working, but then the power station breaks or is broken? What happens with the houses? Of course, it's going to be blacked out again. All of them will be blacked out, right? And then what happens if the main line connecting the power station to these houses is broken? So the hydropower is working, the power station is working, but this line right here, the power line breaks. What's going to happen with these houses? Of course, it's going to be blackout again, right? So that's kind of like the disadvantage, right, of our current technology. Same thing, if let's say this line right there connecting the main line to these top houses is broken, what's going to happen with the top houses? It's going to be blacked out, right? The other houses are still on, but the top houses are still, the top houses are basically off, right? No electricity, right? Hopefully that's clear, right? What happens if the line connecting to this line to this house breaks? What's going to happen with that house? That house is going to be a blackout, right? No electricity, okay? So I'm just showing you that the current technology is not that reliable because we are relying on centralized power plant. Compare that to this technology, right? The one that I'm trying to develop, right? Every single house is a DC house, and every single DC house has solar panel. It could have human powered, right? All kinds, right? Connected into this single house. What happens if the solar panel on this house breaks? Will this house running out of electricity? Well, not really, right? Because that house could be powered by the other houses, right, through these lines. So the neighboring houses could provide power to this house, right? So this house is still good, no blackout. What about if that line right there is broken, right? Is this house going to be out of electricity? Of course not, right? Because this house has its own source, right? The solar panel is working. So even though this line breaks, this house still has electricity, right? What about if that line is out? What happens to these top houses? It will be fine, right? They will be fine because they all have their own sources. You get the idea, right? So now by having this technology, we improve reliability while reducing the burden from having big source to having smaller sources, right? Okay. I'm going to skip this one because this is again different technologies for the sources. You can see sky's the limit, right? You can have a portable wind power right there. That's portable. You can carry this around. Imagine you can do this to your house, right? So you can store energy to the battery and then you can use it at night for LEDs, right? And then you can also have wind power that looks like a tree right there because many people don't like to see a big tall wind power, right? It's not aesthetically pleasing. All right. Other opportunities related to the load. So we can have DC type of water pump, right? DC water filtration system, DC air conditioning, right? So the AC that you have at home could actually be converted into DC. In fact, if you go to Amazon, you can actually buy a DC air conditioner instead of AC. The same thing with freezer. Now we have companies who sell DC freezers, right? And so on and so forth, right? So imagine you have DC sources, solar panels on your campus, and the loads right here, right? Or you see the solar panel on top of this nice bench, right? Or comfortable bench. And then you have solar panel, solar cell roof tile. Imagine that. Then you can have, again, DC source at your fingertips, right? And then you can use it straight to your DC loads. I'm almost done. Then another expansion that I am looking into right now, again, I'm also needing your help in terms of studying the economics behind this. is that in the future, I believe, right, in the future, our house would have a mix of DC electricity and AC electricity. So why not have a hybrid AC/DC for urban house? Anytime I give a presentation such as this, always there's a question. Can you can you utilize the technology that you're offering to urban house, not just rural areas, not just houses in rural areas? Can we use it in big cities, houses in big cities? So my answer to that is yes, we can use the technology that I'm developing for a house in big city or houses in big city. So if you're interested, you could do this, right? You have a mix of AC from utility from PLN and mix it with rooftop solar panels, and you have a separate path, one for AC path, one for DC path. So you can see the AC path goes straight to AC loads, so power your air conditioning, your refrigerator, and then the DC path powers your DC loads such as TVs, LED lights, and then smartphones, all of those, right? And you can see there's a crisscrossing between the two, right? AC can cross to DC, and DC can cross to AC, right? Just in case PLN is out, in case you have a blackout from PLN, so no more electricity from PLN, then you can still power your AC loads from the DC. See this crisscrossing? It's crossing from DC to AC. Likewise, if the solar panels at nighttime there's no sunlight, you can power your DC loads from utility from PLN. See the crossing right there? So we've developed this technology already. So if you're interested, again, I'll be more than happy to follow up. But also I need somebody to study the economics behind this technology, right? Now, another thing about future hybrid AC/DC, it lays out the foundation for the net zero energy building. That's what do you call it? That's the buzzword nowadays, right? Net zero building, net zero building, net zero energy building, right? There's always people trying to develop the technology for net zero energy building. For the DC house that we're developing, is already laying out the foundation, because in order to get net zero energy building, you're going to need a lot of sensors, right? Basically a smart home. You have solar panels which are DC, and then you have a lot of sensors to keep energy not wasted, right? So therefore, the sensors are running on DC. Now imagine if your house already has a DC bus that has a DC electricity, then connecting the sensor would be seamless, would be easy. It would be readily available, right? So again, this DC hybrid system would provide us with flexibility of future net zero energy building, right? And these are pictures of the different prototypes that we have constructed at Cal Poly. That's the DC house prototype at Cal Poly. It's not as nice as the one that we have at Pajajaran University, Unpad. They constructed this DC house prototype there, close to their campus. It's a brick house, very nice looking house. And then Philippines is actually the first country who was interested, right? Interestingly enough, instead of Indonesia, Philippines are the one who invited me first to build a DC house prototype on their campus. So here is where I spent. They invited me to be there for 1 month. So for 1 month, I was there to build the DC house for them. So now they have their DC house technology on their campus, and now they're developing the technology for them as well. And yeah, Indonesia came later. They were interested, but after I was invited from Philippines, sadly speaking, of course. And then we have this still working, right? We have a DC house system installed in one of the regency offices in Sumedang, right? In Jatinangor, right? It combines a small solar panel with a small wind turbine and power the DC lights inside this government building. So right now it's still working, right? All right. So it's a huge undertaking. There's a lot of things to do still. I'm barely halfway done, right? So if you are interested in developing this technology in Indonesia from different aspects of it, right? Business aspect, economic aspect, technological aspect, feel free. Okay, I'll be more than happy to um, work with you on this. Right? And as a summary, maximizing the use of renewable energy sources requires new ways of utilizing them, especially at low scale generating capacity. So I'm interested in low scale, not the big scale, right? So promote the and support the increasing interest in distributed and localized power distribution and increase renewable energy penetration to rural areas as well as remote and isolated areas. And the increasing use of PVs and residential DC loads call for the need for rethinking the way we use electricity, right? So we should not be happy with what we have now. We should think ahead, right? What will be in the future, right? How would that change? So let's put our heads together and let's hopefully develop this technology, and so Indonesia could be the host of this technology, right? That would bring us to the development of the DC house for off-grid as well as hybrid AC/DC house for big cities, right? A lot to explore means opportunities for innovations and business opportunities. And with that, I'm listing the references I'm using for this presentation, and that concludes my presentation. If you are interested, you could go to that website, dchouse.calpoly.edu, and there is my contact info. And that concludes my presentation. Hopefully you learned something from this presentation, and thank you for listening. And yeah, Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Professor Taufik, for such interesting topic, because we know that we are from economics, right? So maybe we can like further address about the issue of your statement before about the challenge for establishing the system in the rural and the urban area, whether there is any challenge. Maybe we can discuss later in the discussion session. All right, we can move to the second speaker. Dr. Mohamed Aslam, are you with us? Hello, Dr. Aslam. Hello, Dr. Aslam. Okay, maybe we can have like a brief discussion before we move to the Dr. Aslam. Yeah, I was a bit captivated with your statement about whether is there any possibility to establish the system into the urban area. So is there any like different challenge between when you establish it in the rural or the urban?
Yeah, yes and no. For rural areas, we don't really need a hybrid. If it's a rural areas, especially if it's away from the grid, away from PLN grid, you don't really need to start with AC. You can start from scratch. You can start with DC, right? So pure DC. That's why it's called DC house. But for urban areas, I don't think that's going to be economically viable, right? Because in urban houses, we already have AC system in place. So it'll be expensive for houses in urban areas to replace everything with DC, right? And so what can we do? Well, we complement AC with DC, right? That way we can still have the AC for the big loads and the DC for the smaller loads, right? And the main thing for houses will be lightings, right? And nowadays, I don't know about Indonesia, but here almost every house right now is using LED lights. Is that the same thing in Indonesia? Pretty much, or not yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. But the time will come when all the light bulbs in your house, right, in Indonesia should be LEDs, because those really is efficient, right? You can save money from utility bill if you replace every single light bulb with LEDs. You should actually do that. If, just gradually you should phase it in.
Okay, thank you for the great answer. All right, I'd like to check again, Dr. Aslam, are you with us? Hello, Dr. Aslam.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aslam. So we will move to the second speaker today. So the second speaker will deliver the topic about the limit to growth, challenge in managing economic resources. But beforehand, I'd like to read his CV. Dr. Mohamed Aslam bin Gulam Hassan is from the Faculty of Business and Economics, University of Malaya. Sorry. And he pursued his PhD from University of Malaya with the title of thesis is Foreign Portfolio Capital, Asset Market and Monetary Policy in Malaysia, Post-Keynesian View, and gained his PhD in 2007. And he also has pursued his Master of Economics in University of Malaya in 1993 and gained his Bachelor of Social Science and Economics from University Science Malaysia in 1999. And he has also published several articles and also books. But let me mention one article entitled The Japan-Malaysian Development in the Shadow of the Rising Sun, and has been published by Routledge, London. And also, he also has published several articles in the journal. And let me mention one entitled An Effect of Tariff Liberalization on Real Exchange Rate, a Case of Malaysia, that has been published in the Asian Economist in 1994. Right, that's the oldest one. But the latest one, let me scroll in. Yeah, there is the latest one in 2022 entitled FDI Inward and Outward in Case of Asian Challenge During the Pre- and Post-COVID-19 Crisis, that has been published in the Asian Economic Letters. All right. All right, without further ado, I'd like to let Dr. Aslam to deliver his materials. Dr. Aslam, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Can't remember the name of the moderator. So thank you for your introduction. Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Can you listen to me? So I issue here now how to upload the PowerPoint now. So I never use Zoom for my teaching and also for meeting. I usually using Google Meet. So how to upload? So I send a PowerPoint slide to who the ladies and who the student name, lady's name. I think I can't remember the name now. Okay. Can I control the slide? Or the
maybe the committee will help you to control. If you say you're gonna next slide, you can just say it.
Okay, sure. So I know a couple of weeks ago I received a WhatsApp from Bapak Herman asking me if I'm willing to give a lecture, something on natural resources, something on management of natural resources. So when The issue is I'm not really specialized in natural resource economy, so I'm more on I'm specialized in international macroeconomics and also on post-Keynesian economics, and the other one also I'm also special in regional economic integration. So then I'm thinking what that even though I agreed to give a lecture on one topic of the subject, and based on the theme of the summer school is management of natural resources. So then I remembered a few things. So one thing is one book called the Limit to Growth, the Limit to Growth, which published in 1972. So this one, the books, probably the author of the book is Meadows and Donella Meadows, and also Dennis Meadows, and also we had a few guys from MIT. So the main issue of the limit to grow is one thing. The main issue is depletion of the natural resources in future, and the other one is demand. And demand for food so increasing, and also based on what happened at the moment now since year 2000, so demand for especially for foods increasing, and so the price of food also I think increased multiple times, and also getting more expensive. On the other hand, also the demography of not only in industrial country but also in third world country changed a lot. So, for example, in a third world country, for example, demographic, for example, total population increasing multiple times since 1970s. And but on the other hand, also demography in industrial country decreasing now, not decreasing. But the main reason, for example, in case in Europe and also in Japan, the birth rate is decline. In case of Japan, the birth rate almost touched to zero, almost touched to zero, and same goes to Europe. European country in general also on average the birth rate is less than 1%. So the future of young people in Europe and in Japan especially will decline. But on the other hand, the young people in developing countries and also the least developed countries, for example, in Africa and some countries in Latin America, will increase. But on the other hand, also one big issue now is aging population. So therefore, the structure of a demographic chain. So since the structure of the demographic chain, so demand for food, demand for energy, and so keep increasing now. So this one has been mentioned in 1972 and discussed by Meadows and the group. So when I was doing my first degree in USM, so on the second year, so one of the lecturers, so I took one course, Islamic Economy Development. So and one assignment is to review this one 1986. I was in second year 1986 at the USM. So the one assignment is to review the limit to growth. So since I have took the paper and also read the books, and also on top of that, a long time ago, so I gave a lecture on sustainable economy development somewhere here in the UM. So then I decide. Then I mentioned to Bapak Herman. So I agreed to give a lecture, but the topic will be on limit to growth. No? So just saying. So roughly this kind of vision, my plan. So one thing until now I'm still wondering, curious a bit, where Bapak Herman got my number. So normally not many people in Indonesia has my my phone number. So I thought, so I made, so I'm thinking, I said maybe he got my number from my former PhD students. Now he's teaching at the Universitas Islamic Muhammadiyah in Malang, Malang. So Eko, his name is Dr. Eko. So surprised to know. And the other, or maybe he got my number from my friend in the Universitas Terbuka Indonesia, or maybe from Pekanbaru, or I don't know where. So I'm big curious where he got my number. But not, as I say, normally I not share my phone number to many people, especially foreigner, unless those people are my friends. Or maybe he knows one of my close friend, Bapak Sardono Sukirno. I say most of you maybe know his name, know this name based on his book. He written on books on microeconomy, macroeconomy, and also the latest one. I think he revised a book, his old books. He revised on the development economies. So maybe from there, but one thing I'm not sure. I'm not sure, roughly. Okay, now come on the topic. Yeah, as I say, the limit to growth, challenges to management natural resources. As I say, for example, normally my outline of my presentation. First thing we look what is the content of the limit to growth, and the other one discussion some content the limit to growth, and the other one followed by economic resources, factor of production. But I remember what discussed by Meadows and his associate in limit to growth. Basically based on factor of production, based on land. Normally land cover mineral land. Remember your factor of production, we have land, we have labor, we have capital, we have entrepreneur, and the other new factor is also enter in factor since middle of 1990. It's a technology. So land normally covers, for example, land covers fertile land, which is agriculture activity, then mining, and also include fishery activity, then also linked to the development of housing industry, and industrial development, and the other one forestry, and so on. So roughly. So that's land linked with the population. So if a population increase, a demand for land increase. But one thing, remember, the land is called endowment, the natural endowment that given by God. So every country has their own endowment. So some country may have, for example, may have some types of natural resources, and some may don't. For example, like Japan do not have minerals. So most, for example, energy sources, for example, like petroleum or oil, gas. Japanese imported from abroad. And the other one also minerals, so the iron, nickel, copper, steel, and so most important. But some countries, for example, like Malaysia, Indonesia, has abundance of natural resources. So like Malaysia and Indonesia has petroleum, gas, and also fertile land, and also produce, for example, types of, for example, also have a minerals of bauxite, and same case in Malaysia. Also we have petroleum, and also we have fertile land also. So we have and we planted with the export crops, for example, rubber, palm oil. Same goes to Indonesia and Thailand, Vietnam's, and so on. But some countries do not have. But some, for example, most of mineral produced by developing countries, for example, like African countries, Latin America, and also some Central Asia. So, in general, industrial country, rich country, less has natural resources except America and Canada. They have a lot. So for example, like a European country, for example, like a Germany and so on, they has a very limited amount of natural resources, but compared to other country. Then follow since most, for example, most our economic system is roughly is based on capitalist system. So then other capitalist system. So exploitation of resources keep on increasing since 70th centuries. So then issue now so in exploitation. So then overproduction, overconsumption, and also since then also since there's industrial development and produce a negative impacts on environment and blah blah and so on. So the issue there. So now the issue currently since year 2000, so since late 1990s, is how to manage, for example, natural resources. See, for example, the impact, for example, from manufacturing sector and also deforestation, and also seen the reserve of mineral depleting now. Most of depleting getting less now. For example, in case of Malaysia, for example, previously Malaysia was the major producer and exporter of tin, but now no more. We are no longer produce, we no longer export tin. We are stop mining tin since 1980s. Now but there are some part in Malaysia, for example, produce tin, but that kind of thing is the quality of things that produce is very, very low quality. And now Malaysia is a net importer of tin. Same goes to petroleum. Also, the reserve petroleum in case of Malaysia now is getting less now. Less. This also happened in some country in Africa, for example. So, for example, in terms of minerals, so less now. Less. The reserve are getting less. Now there's the issue which widely discussed in limit to growth. So that's why that's what I'm thinking. So I think this topic may be, for example, crucial and critical to be lecture on summer school organized by Nusa or Jember. Can go to the second slide. Who handled the slide?
Maybe you can.
I need to control the slide. Is there any other way that I can control the slide?
Yeah, you can share your screen from your computer so you can control yourself. Actually, is it possible?
Share, because okay, just hang on.
Yeah, so you can open your PowerPoint first, and then there is a feature that you can click there, share screen. So you can.
Okay, then how to share under Zoom?
Yours. There is a feature share screen there in the below area of the Zoom.
Which one? Wait, this one share screen?
Yes.
So kita just hang on. So okay, can see.
Yeah. It has been displayed.
So you can see the screen now.
Yeah, you can see the screen.
Okay, sure. Then thank God. So roughly, this about the limit to growth. This is a book which I got the books here. This one bought the limit to growth, and the book have been published. I think republished for a few times. I think nothing more than 6 times. Published by few times. So all books published in 1972, and the gum also getting loose now. So getting loose now. And the other one also then the middle in 1992 also revise the book and re-estimate the model, and this one the second book. This one the revision of the first book, and in year 2004 is another book also revision the third time the third time Meadows and Dennis this Donald Meadows and his group revised again. But one thing is Dennis Meadows had passed away, I think a few years ago. So roughly what's meant by introduction. So in 19, for example, just go through. So in 1970, the think tank called the Club of Rome's, authored by Donella Meadows and Dennis Meadows, and also other few guys from MIT, published a title, the book Limit to Grow. This is a bestseller book in 1970, bestseller book. When the book published in 1972, most economic, for example, this is how to remove this one. Yeah. Okay. So many, for example, like entrepreneurs, businessmen, politicians, and also raise their voice on the output, the result of limit to growth. So for middle team, the limit were roughly linked with the ecological limit, and they apply to economic growth. They were roughly understood as growth in production as measured by gross national product, which they assume implies a similar increase in the consumption of resources. So this one based on limit to growth, page 23. The most probable result of reaching the limit to growth will be a rather sudden and uncontrollable decline in both population and industrial capacity. So over the year, the limit was attacked by many who didn't understand or misinterpret their model and also their analysis, and also and so on. But one thing is, and also now after 50 years, the projection of Meadows has shown a significant evidence that the world we are living now facing many kinds of problems that link to demographic factor, demand for natural resources, which in cost has caused varieties of environmental problem, and also the other one issue link here, rising of price of mineral and food, and the other one decreasing of reserve of mineral. So the book also shown that there is a solid evidence that the economic resources has been misallocated. The misallocation. So if let's say there is a misallocation of resources, then we assume based on the economic theory, that means most countries which rely on primary commodities sector for growth, that means they are not reach Pareto optimum. Pareto optimum, and also they may not reach what we call Pareto improvement. So you need to know what is Pareto optimum, the other Pareto improvement. So limit to growth is suggests a computer model to track the world economy and environment, and the model called World 3. The title, the model World 3. This one based on computer generated model, and it's seen in 1970. Seen I think in either in late 1960s. So I think the computers developed in America. So those were people in MIT use the latest machine to projects what will happen in the world if let's say they given a few variable, and the model which they develop called later will show how the models develop. And the team track, for example, look on industrial development, population, demand for food, usage of resources, and also the pollution. So they model data up to 1970. They develop a range of scenario out to 2000, depending on whether humanity took serious action on environmental and resource issue. If they didn't happen, the modern predictor overshoot and collapse. They may increase, then down. The increase, overshoot, then collapse, down. In the economy, environment, and also population before 2070. This was called the business as usual scenario. There are few scenarios. Roughly there are 5 to 10 scenarios there. But so normally I only pick out one. I cannot discuss all because due to time's limitation. So the Meadows model assumes that the population and industry capital will grow exponentially, leading to similar growth in demand for food and non-renewable and in pollution. Here, need to understand what is meant by exponential growth. So roughly exponential growth. This is what exponential growth. They mean this definition. I think the audience can go through the slide and read by yourself. For example, what's mean? For example, this roughly based on diagram here, we can see this a linear growth and this one exponential growth. Roughly, we doubling the time. We double the time, and this formula. For example, this one in case if let's say we look on population growth. So this is a formula, so and blah blah and so on. So here that so to get the exponential growth, so we double here, for example, E here, and so the time we doubling the time. And then we get this kind of smooth graph here compared to a linear growth. So there's a difference between a linear growth and also exponential growth. So the supply of food and non-renewable resources will, however, taken to be absolutely finite. Therefore, exponential growth within finite limit is in terms of breakdown, and also the expansive nature of compound growth also mean that the finite limit. So finite, but no infinite. So that mean finite. That mean they impose a time frame in their model, for example, from 1970 until 2000. Based on suggested scenario, growing population and demand for material wealth will lead to more industrial output and pollution. But in case, yes, true. In case of Malaysia, for example, in case of Malaysia, for example, so Malaysian government started develop industrial development in early 1960. In early 1960. So since then, we can see the first thing what happened. The negative effect of industrial development. The main effect is pollution, river pollution, and also the air pollution, and also another on top of that also to build a industrial zone, industrial area. So we have to remove some forests. So how deforestation took place. So and also with the link with the industrial development, also link also with the housing area. So some, for example, previously area, for example, was a jungle, but now the jungle turned into industrial area, and also at the same time turn into a city. For example, the good example is in Penang. Penang Bayan Lepas. If you go to Penang, they want an industrial zone near to the airport. Previously, it was jungle, but now that area turned to one of the major manufacturing sector area, and also on that is a major housing sector in Penang. Same thing also in Shah Alam in Selangor. Here previously was jungle in 1960. Then the government turned the Shah Alam into as a industrial zone. Then on top of that also develop a new city called Shah Alam. So that's the thing happen. So on to develop the thing, so government have to remove forest and also the other one, some that are close by in Shah Alam is a plantation there. So namanya rubber plantation. rubber estate. So remove rubber estate, turn the rubber estate itu concrete jungle. So based on a suggested scenario, growing population and demand for material will lead to more industrial output and pollution. So the graph later will show resources are being used up a rapid rate. Pollution is rising, industrial output and food per capita is rising. So this one really happened in the world now. The good example, just look at the new emerging economy, for example, like China. In China now, the pollution is quite bad, quite bad. And so some country, for example, in Africa, for example, like South Africa, same goes to Malaysia also. And also the other one, the next country is on the line is Vietnam. Vietnam. And don't talk about some country in Latin America, for example, like Brazil and also Mexico, getting worse. So according to the book, to feed the continued growth in industrial output, there must be ever-increasing use of resources, but resources become more expensive to obtain as they are used up. Just a good example, oil, petroleum. Petroleum very expensive. Previously in 1960, before the collapse of Bretton Woods system, so the price of gold very cheap. Remember your Bretton Woods system? The price of gold very cheap. For example, 1 ounce of gold roughly about $30, 30 American dollar. But after the collapse of a Bretton Woods system, the price of gold shoot up. Now, after 1 ounce of gold is roughly more than 400 American dollar, or more than 500 American dollars. Same goes to oil, petrol. Even 1 barrel before what call Arab-Israel war in 1972, the price of oil very cheap. 1 barrel less than 10 American dollar. But now 1 barrel of oil is more than 100 American dollar. So the price will get to be expensive now. Same goes to other kind of mineral, for example, like iron, copper, nickel. Are getting expensive, expensive. As more and more capital goes to resource extraction, industrial output per capita start to fall. So output fall. This one you can check. If let's say you can get, for example, the e-books. There, I think one guy. I think there are few people as scan the books and upload on internet. You can Google on internet. You can get the e-book of the limit to grow. But the second the second and the third book you aren't able to get the e-book. It's not easy to get an e-book. So so either you borrow the book from the library, if let's say the library has the book, or maybe you can buy the second hand. The second hand book is quite expensive also. So the pollution more and industrial input into agriculture fall, food production per capita fall. So health and education services are cut back. And that combines to bring about rise the death rate from about 2020. So global population begin to fall from 2030. This one estimated by the books. But based on the current letter, I'll show the current trend. The current trend show that the population is growing. But one thing, the increment of the growth of population is quite marginal. But about how a billion people per decade. So now total population in the world now is roughly about more than 7 billion. Just give an example, for example, in case of Malaysia, for example, in 1960, total population in Malaysia about 10 million. But now total population about 33 million, so increase. So about 3 decades, from 10 million increase to 33 million. Same thing goes to Indonesia. In 1960, total population roughly about 100 million. But now total population in Indonesia about more than 200 millions. So how the growth of population. So living condition fall to similar to the early 1900s. Therefore, the one thing here, resource constraints that bring about global collapse. Global collapse means, for example, demand for since the demand for foods increasing, and also the price increasing, so and poverty increase. So some people are unable to buy foods, and the other one, mineral reserve of mineral depleted, and so on. And the other one, the cost of our produce or exploitation of mineral cause environmental problem and so on. However, limit to growth does factor in the follow from increasing pollution, including climate change. Another one thing is the biggest issue since 2010 is a climate change. Now we seen I think a couple of years ago so we have, for example, like what call the for example, in case of rainy season change, in case of previously, we know that a certain month we will receive what call a few rains, and also and reach a month we know that this month what call we may face, for example, like a drought, and also the other one less rain. But now we assume now it changed. Same thing also happened in Japan and also in Europe. For example, during the winter times, the number of snowfall and so all change, roughly change. And also another biggest issue is, for example, the Greenland. So the ice breaking up, So issue. So warming, for example, the one carbon dioxide emission will have a climate effect, and also the warming of the global warming. So as a limit to conclude in 1972, if the present growth trend in world population, industrialization, pollution, food production, and resource depletion continue unchanged, the limit to grow on this planet will be reached sometime within the next 100 years. So that means 100 years, that means the world may collapse. The most probable result will be a rather sudden and uncontrollable decline in both population and industrial capacity. So there's roughly the limit to grow apply mathematical system modeling to 5 particular variables. They are their variable: world population, industrialization, pollution, food production, and natural resource depletion. So the methods use a computer technology to study the complex interaction of these variables by showing the three potential future outcomes. In these two scenarios, the global system experience what they call an overshoot and collapse. That means increase, overshoot, then down. Something like a business cycle. You increase, then down again. In either the middle or toward the end of the 21st century. Now we are in the 21st century now. We can see some impact. What mentioned by limit to growth. In the third scenario, the computer arrived at what they call a stabilized was this one I may not discuss in no time. So roughly this roughly their model. Roughly therefore population, land, agriculture capital, pollution, industrial capital, and this one and so on. And so also this another model. There are a few scenarios there. So population, non-renewable resource reserve, then service capital, and also industrial capital. And these are the output. This one resources. This one from 1900. So here's so much. Then moving to 2000, so resource depleted, and the other one population here. You can see the thicker line, the thicker graph moving up, then sudden drop, Same goes to industrial output per capita increase, then decline, This is what it calls overshoot. They overshoot, then collapse. Same goes, so for example, pollution. Pollution, for example, previously very small pollution, then suddenly increase, then later on collapse. So roughly the model, if let's say we redraw the model something like this. So these are resources in the red line, in 1900. So much of the natural resources then declined, depleted. And the other one here, for example, food per capita increase, then the food demand for food closely linked with the growth of population. So increase, then decline. Same goes to population here. Same goes to industrial per capita. This one in yellow line, increase, then decline. And also their pollution, and so on. So 30 years after limited growth, this one the world scenario shows how population growth and natural resource use interacted to impose limit to industrial growth, a novel and even controversial idea at that time. So there are many argument on the limit to growth. Some people say later I will discuss a bit the what called the argument, the critics and the argument of limit to growth. So in 1900, however, the world population and economy was still comfortable within the planet carrying capacity. The team found that there was still a room. This one, what they found out in 1992. 1992 when they revised the book. This is the book. The Beyond the Limit. Beyond this one after revision of the limit to growth. Limit to growth. So in 1992 was this one no longer true. So on the 20th anniversary of the limit to growth, the team updated limit in book called Beyond the Limit. So in 1990 there was a compelling evidence that the humanity was moving deeper into unsustainable territory. Beyond the Limit argued that in many areas we have overshoot our limit. They mean they overestimated or expanded our demand on the planet resources and sink beyond what could be sustained over time. And the main challenge which identified in the Beyond the Limit was how to move the world back into sustainable territory. So one quotation in the books, to overshoot mean to go to this one. What is mean by overshoot? What is mean by overshoot? To overshoot mean to go too far, to grow so large so quickly. To go too far, to grow so large so quickly that limits are exceeded. When an overshoot occurs, it induces stress that begin to slow and stop growth. The three causes of overshoot are always the same at any scale from personal to planetary. First, there is a growth acceleration, rapid change. Second, there is some form of a limit or barrier beyond which the moving system may not safely go. Third, there is a delay or mistake in perception and response that try to keep the system within its limits. The delays can arise from attention, faulty data or false theory about how the system responds, deliberate effort to mislead, or from momentum that prevent the system from being stopped quickly. So this is roughly what's meant by overshoot and this one shoot. So in 2008, the original author returned to their model and published a 30-year review and how accurate their prediction had been. So they found that measurement of all the variables they had identified were tracking with the prediction the computer model had made and for an overshoot and collapse scenario. So the accuracy of the prediction the study had made for the short term does not prove their longer term prediction. This one, the short term does not prove the longer term prediction were accurate. This one. So stay here. So this the third one. 30 update the limit to growth. The here only this guy passed away. Dennis Miller passed away. Passed away I think a couple of years ago. So the limit to this one a synopsis to limit to growth. The 30 update. Sea level had rise more than 20 to 20 centimeters in 1900. One is issue now. The sea level has increased. Most non-polar glaciers are retreating and the extent and the thickness of Arctic sea ice is decreasing in summer. In 1998, more than 45% of the globe people had to live on income every $2 a day. That means poverty rate increase. The data you can get from ILO. Try to Google on International Labour Organization. There's the report there, and also you may go to United Nations website, or maybe you can check on UNTAD the website, and they don't also maybe on Escape, Escape, with the office at Bangkok. So they have a document, a report on the poverty in either in the world or in Asia Pacific. Meanwhile, the richest 1/5 of the world population has about 85% global GNP. The richest 1/5 of the world population, 1/5, has 85% of the global GNP. These are most located in industrial country, America, normally in G7 country, America, Canada, Germany, the other one, UK, Japan, and so on. So, and the gap between rich and poor is widening. So in the 2002, the Food and Agriculture Organization estimated that 75% of the world ocean fishes will fish at or beyond capacity. They mean overfishing. Overfishing. Same thing also in case Malaysia. I just an example in case Malaysia. For example, overfishing. So how to reduce overfishing? How to, for example, to meet demand? Then the country go to aquaculture activity. Same goes to Indonesia now. Same to happen in case in Japan. Japan one of the biggest consumer fish. So previously they overfish, for example, tuna and blah blah. But now the Japanese government, for example, they introduce a law that how many tuna can be fished for certain month or certain week. And the other one also same goes to European country, for example, and also in Alaska, for example, the government, for example, they fish in the crab. So they only allow, for example, the Alaskan for US government only allow for certain period. That mean the fishermen can go fishing crab. So same goes to, for example, like a Norwegian government, British government. So they've imposed a limit. For example, how much the fishermen can fish, can fish in the fish. For example, North Atlantic cod fishery fish, for example, this one, sustainable for 100 of years has collapsed. The species may have been pushed to no longer. For example, previously in case of Malaysia, for example, maybe in same goes to Indonesia. Previously, we have many kind of fish, species of fish, but not hardly to get. Because overfishing, so we unable to get the many fish which previously we able to get. Because why? The main reason is overfishing. For example, like a mackerel block. So in case previously is very cheap because why? Too many, but now it's very expensive now because less now. So if let's say we go to the wet market, for example, to get the mackerel block, one kind of the long fish or mackerel block, it's very expensive now because why? The quantity of the mackerel block is less now. So fishing. So the issue. The first global assessment of soil loss based on study on 100 of experts found that 30% of nearly 1.4 billion acres of currently used agriculture has been degraded. That means the land, either the agricultural land turned into housing area or turned to industrial zone, or maybe the land became less fertile. So the same thing happened in case of Malaysia, for example. Previously, we have, for example, a huge land for agriculture, for example, for paddy, but now less. The land, the field of paddy converted into industrial zone and also converted into housing area. Why? To meet demand of growing population. I think it happened also in case of Indonesia also. The size of agricultural land is decreased now because why? The government of the thing need a land to build a housing area or to build industrial zone. So 54 nations experienced decline in per capita GDP for more than a decade during the period 1990 until 2001. The above are symptoms world in overshoot, then they decrease, then they collapse. Where we are drawing on the world resources faster than they can be restored. Mineral cannot be restored. Whatever you mine, for example, like petroleum, gas, bauxite, aluminium, nickel, copper, you cannot restore. Whatever you produce, whatever you mine is gone, unless you recycle. But gas and petrol, you cannot recycle. We cannot recycle, but the metal, for example, a non-ferrous metal, as for example, like nickel, copper, then the other one, titanium, then many kind of mineral. That kind we can recycle, but gas and the petrol we cannot recycle. Whatever gone is gone, and we are receiving waste. And we are release waste and pollutant faster than the earth can absorb them or render them harmless. They are here leading us to a global environmental and economic collapse. But there may still be time to address these problems and soften the impact. I think one good example here. Germany was biggest producer of steel. I think somewhere in the late 1980s or early 1990s, so European government, including German governments, proposed to close down all steel company which or any industry which cause pollution. Now, if you travel to Germany now, you hardly can see now any steel factory now, but most which previously factory still located in Germany moved from Europe and either they relocated to African country or Asian countries. So now, if you travel to Europe now, for example, I used to go to Germany and study 1 year in Germany and also in Japan also. So you can breathe a nice air, So this is the way how the local European government take care their environment, especially to reduce emission of carbon dioxide and also to take care to ensure that the air that breathed by the people is a clean air. Then leading us a global environmental problem and so economic collapse. So here, what the 30 has shown us some progress, including new technologies, roughly new technology linked, for example, technology of recycle of resources, either papers, tin and blah blah and so on, or and the other one, what called silicon, for example, glass, and the other one, new institution developers is a law and agency, and also new awareness of environmental problems. So the author are more pessimistic than they were in 1972. Humanity has acquired the opportunity to correct our current course over the last 30 years. This one may true in case of a rich country especially in European country, but not in third world countries. Same thing here in case of Malaysia now, for example. We are still, for example, some squatter from group of people still, for example, involved in logging activity, deforest, they do some deforestation and blah blah. So happened, for example, a couple of months ago, when we have a very heavy fall of rain, so some part in Malaysia flooded by heavy, never happened before, heavy flood. The area flooded quite heavily, and also the logs drive from the hill to the people area, to the housing area, and so on, and cost roughly the cost of the flood to the people roughly more than $1 billion ringgit in Malaysia. So same thing also in case of Indonesia, for example, when some company, for example, deforest to plants palm tree, to palm oil. So what the cause? Air pollution, so haze. So not only is who affected people, that haze affected people health, and so this is the issue. So humanity has squandered the opportunity to correct our current course over the last 30 years. They conclude and must change if the world is to avoid the serious consequence of overshoot in 21st century. So then limit to growth include both the material and energy that extracted from the earth and the capacity of the planet to absorb the pollutant that are generated or as though material and energy are used. Stream of material and energy flow from the planetary sources through the economic system to the planetary wising, where waste and pollutant end up. There are limits, however, to the rate at which sources can produce this material and energy without harm to people, the economy, or the process of regeneration and regulation. Resources can be renewable. For example, let's say we have energy, either use of wind or, for example, water, sea, air, and so on. Like agriculture, soil, or no renewable, like the world oil resources, both have their limits. So every resource have their limits. That means if there are limits, so we need to take care. I need to take care. The most obvious limit on food production is land. So people growing, population increase, so demand for land increase, demand for example, housing, and so on increase. And also, so if increase, that means the land for agriculture decrease. So millions of acres of cultivated land are being degraded by processes as a soil erosion and sensation, while the cultivated area remain roughly constant. So therefore, in case of Malaysia, for example, we are agricultural land for agriculture is now is less now. It's a decline, and stagnant. And Malaysia is one of major. Malaysia is our country is a major. We are net importer of food. Even though we produce rice, but we still import rice from India, Pakistan, and from Thailand. Also we are net importer of dairy products. We import dairy products from Australia, from New Zealand, and from Netherlands. And also meat. Even though we have, for example, poultry and poultry activity, we have for example, beef, and also we have and so on. But one thing is not enough, not enough for people. So we import beef, meat from Australia, New Zealand, and also from India. Same thing also fish. Malaysia one of the major consumer of fish. So some we import fish from Thailand and Indonesia, and also sometimes to certain extent we import from Philippines. So loss. So that means population growing, demand for land increase, demand for food increase, and so on. So higher yield have compensated somewhat for this loss, but yield cannot be expected to increase indefinitely. Per capita grain production peaked in 1985. Now one problem, the latter problem, the war with Russia and Ukraine. Russia is one of the major producer and exporter of wheat. Now, Malaysia is a net importer of wheat. Same goes to Indonesia also. I don't think so. Indonesia plants wheat. Well, most of wheat, for example, flour imported from abroad. So, seeing the price of wheat increasing due to the war, Ukraine and Russia. So, they made the cost, the price of wheat, the price of flour, the price of, and that's all, any the food that linked to the wheat increasing. So that impacts inflation. Therefore, exponential growth has moved the world from land abundance to land scarcity. So now land getting, remember, land is an endowment given by God. We cannot increase, or we may decrease, but we cannot increase the land. The size of the country is given by the God. So we're gonna increase size of land. That's size. Every country has their own size. So their size, that's given by the God. So up to the people how to want to manage the land in terms of, for example, agriculture activity, or the other one, for example, exploitation of a mineral, and also, for example, to building a city, housing, and so on. So within the last 35 years, the limit aspect of area with the best soil have been approached. Another limit is to food production is water now. It's not easy to get clean water now. It's not easy to get clean water now. So some countries are unable to get clean water. Some maybe yes, some countries, and so on. The few things, how many minutes do I have now?
You have about 25 minutes.
25 minutes.
Yes.
So I may skip some part because I don't think so I'm able to go through one by one. So roughly, if maybe someone can read or work on whatever written on the PowerPoint, so and so on. So this one, this slide I think is a same thing what the discussed and in the third book. This one is the model, for example, counter. See, whatever counter in the GDP come from land. Remember a factor of production, land. So land, for example, to develop agriculture activities, need a land. The other one, mining, and also forestation, fishery, all counter under GDP. So whatever activity based on land, all counter under GDP. These are production, for example, based on agriculture activity, mining, fishery, forestation, and the other one on construction activity, all counted under GDP. So the output. So if let's say the land factor of production used optimally and so output may expand and increase. And also maybe the government can, if let's say use optimally, so people will benefit. So roughly this is a model. This is the latest model which based on the latest book, the third book, this one based on this one, limit to grow. This is the third book after 30 years. So that means the middle re-estimate based on same model, they re-estimate the thing. So so the pattern, roughly the pattern not much change compared to the earlier one. But same thing also here, resource depleting, population growing, then decline. Industrial output increase, then decline again. Same thing, pollution, sharp increase, and also demand for food, or same thing also, move up, then decline. So, and then also another factor which include in the third book is human welfare index. For example, increase, then decline. Same thing also with human ecological footprint. This is a table here. You can read here. What's in by human ecological footprint? Increase. Then at a certain time, when you reach a peak, you call the peak here, they will decline. These are critics. There are many, for example, when the limited group published, so the book received many critics. So some, there are many, for example, article published in journal, for example, journal, in good journal, criticize the output of limited growth. And also the books, there are few books also critics limited to one of the books which I have the book, the copy of the books. This one, the title of the book, Limit of a Modern World. This one published in 1975. This one widely argue and criticize the limit to growth. Roughly, if possible, I don't have time to discuss what discussed by McCushion. So if possible, if let's say the library has the book, you can read the book, because Limit of a Modern World. This one published in 1970, 5 years after Limit to Growth published. And also the other one, the critic basically based on the method used. And the method used, they will look on exponential method. How they double the time, then when the growth increase sharply, then collapse. And the book central point in Mars, for example, is that another is the Earth is finite, and also the quest for unlimited growth in population, material goods, and also so on. So the issue here, as I say, and the issue, for example, another issue, for example, which not for example taken by the middle, is the birth rate. In general, birth rate in rich country, industrial country declining. For example, like Japan, I say almost the birth rates are almost touch to zero. Almost touch to zero, and the whole population in expand. Now, in case in Japan, the pyramid upside down now. Previously nicely, but not upside down. The old people are more than the young people. Same goes in case of Germany, Netherlands, and also the Sweden and so on. So, but in case US, but the birth rate roughly about 1+%. And supply of food, the issue is supply of food. In question now, since the population is growing, so demand for food. So the issue is supply, not supply food. And some argue reserve of nature, resources until now are still enough. But even though it's enough, but the price of resources are very expensive, getting expensive now. Another issue which not include in LTG is the role of technology. Role of technology, for example, to produce alternative energy, for example, renewable energy, and also recycling activity, blah blah, and so on. So in case, for example, I give example. In case, for example, in Germany, for example, the recycle activity is quite good. They mean, for example, they recycle everything, the papers, the steel, and so the glass, and so on. Recycle. This is some argument. I may skip the argument. So I don't think I have 25 minutes. So I don't think so able to go all the argument. This argument which on the limit to growth. This one which are published by Beckerman. They are done by the Comber. So they argue. But the main issue here, for example, here there's a resource misallocation here. Resource misallocation. That's why what happened to the world now, and so not only to in general, because the resource misallocation. That's why we have, for example, the supply of food is not enough, and also the summer we are facing, for example, the climate change, and also we are facing, for example, very bad, for example, environmental problem, for example, air pollution, river pollution, and so on. Why? Resource misallocation, and so this one resource misallocation reduce economic growth, reduce economic, and also increase costs, to the government. This is a new research, basically based on this one done by Dr. Graham of Melbourne, University of Melbourne. So same thing also. This guy, they use a same method which suggested by Meadows in limit to growth. So use the same variable and blah blah, and he run again. And also based on their result, they agree that, for example, whatever Meadows say is true. That means we are facing. For example, economy may collapse in either in the 21st century or the coming century, for example. So, for example, here, the thick line, the dotted line is from Meadows. The dotted line is from Meadows. The thick line is from Dr. Graham. So we can see that death rate decline, birth rate decline, but population increase. Then later on will collapse. We collapse. So this one look on case of population here. This one economy, for example, food per capita. The dotted line from Meadows, the thick line from Dr. Graham. So demand for food increasing, then collapse. That means the trend is follow what shown by what has been shown by Meadows. Same goes to service per capita, this one in a navy blue line, and also industrial output increase, then collapse. Then the last one, environment. Resource depleting. This one, the dotted line from Meadows, the thick line, the thicker line is from Dr. Graham. So that means the trend which shown by Dr. Graham are similar, roughly are similar, or for example, or collide with the limit to growth. So that means the natural resource decline and also the pollution increasing. That means to a certain extent, that means whatever shown by Dr. Graham, that means whatever discussed by Dr. Graham, and also based on their study, that means whatever shown and discussed by the Meadows in their book Limit to Growth are true into a certain extent. But here one thing, but here what they say. This one does not indicate that the collapse of the world economy, environment, and also population is and so on. And no, they claim that future will unfold exactly as the Meadows say. They was the predicted in 1972. But if let's say happens, so war could break out. War could break out. So and so on. So now look on another here. Conclusion of Limit to Growth. This one. More than 4 decades after the Club Room published its controversial landmark report debates about the limit to growth still thrive. This debate remains a vital element in understanding the challenges of the economic progress in 21st century. So if the Club Room projections are right, then the next few decades are decisive. There is an unsettling evidence that society is tracking the standard run of the original study, which lead ultimately to collapse. And suggest that production peak for some key resources may only be decade away. On this one, for example, in a good example I give in case of Malaysia, for example, tin. Previously, we produce a lot. Malaysia was a major producer and exporter of tin, but now no longer now. All collapse. Same goes to certain kind of mineral, for example, I think bauxite and aluminium. So now the reserve of bauxite and aluminium depleted. Same go, for example, like there is some for example, the major producer of nickel and copper is Chile. So reserve nickel and Chile reserve of nickel and copper in Chile is a decline. So it's overproduced, over exploited, and so on. And the other one here, for example, here, the other one here, the last one I pick up few lines here. So the demand of limit to growth suggests an urgent need for policy maker and politicians to take a longer term perspective, not just an urgent challenge as climate change, but also a resource horizon, which are at best a few generations away. These are here, just I've seen mentioned a generation. Yeah. So what happening here? What happening since late 17th century until now? So the world economy roughly controlled by capitalist system. So under capitalism, so most of firms exploit natural resources without thinking future generation. So now if let's say resources decline or depleted, so what happened to our future generation? There's one issue here. So if, for example, in food getting very expensive, for example, let's say, for example, no more petroleum, no more gas, and so what will happen to our future generation? So and so this one that means the policy now. So the politician and so the policy maker have to think how to conserve natural resources for future generation. So they mean have to do something. There's another issue is the implication for social justice. Social justice also. and so on. Most of the overshoot is due to wasteful lifestyle in the rich country, and also another one, the poverty is incident poverty is very high. More than 3 billion people live on less than two American dollar per day. So issue. This one I mentioned factor of production here. Then the other one, another issue of sustainable development. So the concept of sustainable development has been popularized by a Brundtland report. This one in 1989. So this one, there are many definition given for sustainable development. What is meant by sustainable development? So normally, sustainable development is a metaphysics that will unite everybody from the profit-minded industrialist and risk minimizing subsistence farmer to the equity-seeking social worker, the pollution concept of wildlife living. First of all, the growth maximizing policy maker, the goal-oriented bureaucrat, and therefore the vote counting politician. So this one roughly the few. And another roughly the standard model of the sustainable. So the loop within we have social sector, we have environment. So this three circle here. One circle on social, the other circle on environment, the other circle on economy. So these are all integrated. Then we have a sustainable development. So here, for example, the biggest one, for example, environment, the second one is society, and the third one economy. So that means we need to do care environment. Take care environment, then take care of society, then goes to economy. So this and so on. So if these three parts is we take care, so we may have what we call sustainable development. That means our resources may be preserved and conserved for future generation. So this one roughly another, for example, definition of sustainable development. Economic growth provides a condition in which protection of the environment can be best and environmental protection in balance with other human goals. But here we have, for example, when talking about here, we have a trade-off. Trade-off between economic growth and also with environment. So if let's say, for example, those countries, for example, rely on the primary industry sector, either on agriculture for export industry, also we have mine or mineral, blah, blah, and so on. So we produce a lot. Yes, the growth will increase, economic growth will increase, income will increase, but on the other hand, the impact will be on environment. So the trade-off. You may get you may produce a high or rapid economic growth. On the other hand, you may get a negative impact on environment. So there's a trade-off. So how we need to offset this thing? How we need to, for example, the growth must equal to environment. So the requirement for clean, equitable economic growth remain the biggest single difficulty with the largest challenge of sustainable development. So this one here. Want to maintain high growth, and also on the other one to maintain what called, for example, a good environment sector. For example, want to get a clean water, clean air, and so. So it's the biggest challenges. To policymaker or to the government. So taking a long-term perspective, follow that economic growth, trade expansion, and environmental protection are goals that can only be reached in conjunction. This one issue. So and so on. So growth can reduce pollution if it increases the productivity of resources. That is a reduced waste. That means this one roughly, if let's say they follow what called Pareto optimum, Pareto optimum, or at least I'll go to second best theorem, Pareto improvement. So faster than both resource output and population growth. So this one I don't think I have much time. I think only about a few minutes. So this one I skip a part. So this one from Meadows. Sustainability does not mean zero growth. We can get growth. If let's say we go for sustainable development, still we can get a economic growth. But one thing, how we manage our natural resources to produce growth. and so on. So and so on. Here roughly a current scenario. That this one I just use a graph and show what's happening. This one based on Meadows from 1950 until now. So GDP per capita increasing. Every continent of the world, East Asia, Middle, all GDP per capita increase. Increase. So then here population world increase, for example, 1700 until 2000. So increase. Increase. This one annual growth, but on general, the absolute value increasing now. This is a world, the projection of the world. This one, for example, here, the world developed, and so based on this chart, world population increase. That means somehow it's whatever shown by in the limit to grow is in certain aspects true. Population is growing. World population is growing. So world population is growing. Then this one by region, and demand for food increase. Demand for food increase. This one until 2030. So demand for food. So issue here the food. So if the demand for food, then live with the land. We need a land. We need a fertile land, and so on. So consumption. Consumption. And then here, the global per capita food production, the one based on corn, rice, wheat, potato, and so on. So increase. Even though some increase margin, this one increase marginally because why? The size of land are stagnant. The size of land for agriculture is not changed. That's why we have a somewhat stagnant trend of roughly the trend of for example wheat is roughly not much change. Stable because why? The size of land, and then maybe affected by climate change, disaster, for example, like a hurricane, flood, destroy the crops. This one, for example, crop yield world. You can see here, and so on. Mostly the trend are big stable. So a big stable, therefore the price, population is growing. Supply of food is stable, therefore the price of food increasing. So if there's a price increasing, then the issue those people earning, for example, low income people, how they want to purchase and consume staple food, and so on. So this one daily supply. For example, in case of North America, this is a rich country, Europe rich country, and so on. So demand. This one commodity. This one I skip. But this is a price. The food price index. Very expensive compared to year 2000 and now 2020. So how much the increment of the price now? So very expensive. This one due to oil shock in 2005, and also this one also due some crisis. For example, now we have another crisis, and so on. So it's a land now. Crop land per capita decline. So if decline, then supply of food be stable or decline. And here crop land used over the long term from 1600 to 2016. So increase, long term increase, but one thing even to increase, but supply of food drop. This one global land use for food production here. Well, Earth surface here we have Earth surface, and also for agricultural land here, only 70% for livestock, meat and dairy, 50% for agriculture, and so on. I quickly go, just go some table. This one, agriculture, for example, crop land, and for example, here used for producing direct human food, and so on. And there are no beef. The land we use for this one, mutton, for example, and so on. So all we need land to produce food. So if there's a growing population increase, and also we're not able to manage the land which is given by the God. So how we able to produce and to meet demand for our people, our population? This one mineral, this one on the other on mineral side. So total production 2019 by continent. So the biggest one Asia. This one normally cover petroleum, petroleum and gas. This one the demand. This one Russia, China, Australia. The biggest, the 4 biggest mining nations. For example, this one, for example, China. This one or America. This one Russia, and this one Australia. These are the rest. So the 4 biggest countries produce. This one world mining production, the ton, and total mining production increase. So this one show that, for example, we are still, for example, some countries still depend on primary industry. Primary industry, for example, many countries, those in Africa and also in Latin America. So this one declining, this one declining production rate since 2000 decline. Even the produce but decline rate. Some country decline, for example, European decline, but other country increase. This one increase due to this one, the yellow line due to mainly come from petroleum and gas. Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. This one normally mineral. This also mineral, also gas, also petroleum and gas. This one mineral, mineral. This one in case of America, mineral, gas, and petroleum. So production linked to carbon dioxide emission from fossil fuel. So increasing. That's one reason why we have climate change due to carbon dioxide. So the last one, I think, natural resource management here. So I try to make it short. So natural resource management refers to the sustainable utilization of major natural resources such as land, water, air, mineral, forest, fishery, and wild flora and fauna. Together, these resources provide an ecosystem service that provide better quality to human life. Natural resources provide fundamental life support in the form of both consumption and public good service. So ecological process maintains soil productivity, nutrient recycling, the cleansing of air and water, and also climate cycle. So there are a few here. So I think this one, and the other main here, I think we need to conserve our natural resources. Conserve not for current purpose, but also for our future generation. So the issue. And the last personal policy to protect, so need a policy to protect the natural resources from wasteful production and consumption, and also non-renewable resources depleting so at a rapid rate. So that means we need some technology, for example, to recycle waste of non-renewable resources. So it should be developed and so on. This one, in case of third world country, we are less focused. But in a rich country, for example, in case in Japan, in Europe, they're more focused on technology for non-renewable resources. So land should be used more optimally. Deforestation should be reduced. Replanting activity should be enhanced. And the other one for land need a choice of export crop and food production. For example, in case Malaysia, we still focus on export crop. For example, palm oil especially. Same goes to Indonesia now. Indonesia also focus on export crop. So they will need to balance out between the export crop and also food production. So I think I stop here. So if is there any question, then we can why cannot?
Maybe you can stop share screen. It is in the
Stop share.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, because I'm not using Zoom. So I usually in teaching and also in meeting, I'm using Google Meet. I'm using Google Meet. So
Okay, thank you for the insightful materials from Dr. Aslam. So we are So we are arriving in the discussion session. So I invite for the first three audience that will ask for either Dr. Aslam or Professor Taufik. And we have two questions in the chat box from I don't know, Mr. or Mrs. Maltaraga for Professor Taufik. The question is, the performance of the national electricity system is inadequate, as can be seen from the low power generation capacity, electrification ratio, and electricity consumption per capita. In terms of policy from an economic perspective, industrial organization theory holds that the performance of industry is influenced by the behavior of agents, producer and consumer in the industrial structure that surrounds it. The industry structure consists of three main components. They are market concentration, product differentiation, and barriers to entry. The questions are, what and how is the structure of an efficient electricity industry within the framework of the analysis of economic regulation to be able to provide improved service to the entire community? And what is the opinion about the current electricity policy in Indonesia? Has it been effective and efficient in growing a just society with the use of environmentally friendly electrical energy? And the question for Dr. Aslam, what is your opinion about the limits to growth debate on the identifying concern with three potential kinds of limits: ecological limits to the physical scale of economic activity, limits to the economic welfare to be derived from the growth of economic activity, and social limits to the economic growth, especially in developing countries such as Indonesia and Malaysia? And what is the relationship between limit to growth and sustainable development, which is grappling with ecological realities issue in developing countries? So maybe Professor Taufik might answer the question first.
Thank you for the questions. It's very in-depth questions you have here. I'm going to try my best to answer based on my technical knowledge. There are two parts of the question. The first one is what and how is the structure of an efficient electricity industry within the framework be able to provide improved services to entire community? How could how could the infrastructure provide improved services? Basically, that's the question, right? Within the framework of economic regulation, which I don't know much about, but in the bigger scheme of things, right? If we talk about electricity, it is a very complex and at the same time regulated environment. And in terms of providing improved services, that has become not just a problem in countries like Indonesia, but even modern countries like the US. It is still a problem, right? How do we actually provide improved services? And I think bottom line is, from my point of view, is that every country has their own priorities in terms of electricity industry, right? I understand that Indonesia has the main priority to be providing access more so than improving services per se, right? So that's the priority that I understand, is that the government is trying hard now to be able to provide electricity to every single house in Indonesia, as an example, right? That's more priority than providing better services, right? Of course, in other areas, that's true in a global, like in a bigger scheme of thing in Indonesia, but in several areas where electricity is already reaching maybe close to 100% ratio, then of course now the priority will shift. So there are localized problems where now that the population already have the electricity, so then what next? What is next? Well, providing improved services, right? And that includes, for example, reliability, right? how much power can we deliver to the customers per year? Is it ever interrupted? If it's so, then how often it is interrupted, right? So that we get into a reliability type of level, right? Not just not providing anymore, but also now in terms of reliability problem. Let's say once that is taken care of, then there's another level of problem, right? It's called quality of the power, right? Make sure that the quality of the power that we'll deliver does not or is acceptable by any residentials. They don't damage, for example, equipment easily, things like that. So it is a multidimensional, unfortunately, question, which I don't think there is one single answer to it. Like I said, every country has their own priorities, even within a country, right? Within different areas or regions of the countries, they have their own priorities in terms of what you meant by improved services, right? But all in all, I mean, when it comes to if your question is referring to renewable energy, then that's another dimension of this question, right? Once you have provided enough, for example, percentage of rural electrification ratio, then how can we complement renewable energy into the mix, right? That's another dimension. Why is that important? Because that would then also save costs in terms of the use of fossil fuels, right? It's more sustainable and so on and so forth, right? And is that going to be the same thing with rural areas? Of course, it's not going to be the same thing, right? In rural areas, the priority is not how to complement, but how to actually provide solar panels, for example, for their use, because they're so far away from the grid. So you can see that this is not an easy question to answer, a very multidimensional question. And unfortunately, I don't think I have the single answer for you, but the short answer to this would be provided services would depend on, right, the condition of the country, the region that you are referring to. Then we can talk about, okay, what kind of infrastructure, what is the effect of infrastructure to improve the services, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope you get the gist of the answer. The second part of the question is, has it been effective policy, right? Policy of the current electricity policy in Indonesia. Again, I'm not an expert in policies related to electricity in Indonesia, but if you relate that to renewable energy, it's getting better, right? I think government is again putting a good effort in putting more incentives for people to put up or to utilize renewable energy. And then government also has put forward, for example, the plan of putting the mix, what was it again, 25% by 2031. So 25%, if I'm not mistaken, 25% of energy being produced in Indonesia should be coming from renewable energy, right? That's the goal by 2031. But then also in 2050, I believe the mix is going to be about 35%. So that's the goal, right, from the Indonesian government, and I think that's the step in the right direction, right? Creating, some kind of goal, which then hopefully will triggers, right, policies that would support the development of renewable energy, the use of renewable energy. And we've already seen some of the incentives from the Indonesian government for customers to use, for example, solar panels. Used to be, the way I remember, used to be that if you have a solar panel, if you generate power to PLN, then for every 1 kilowatt hour you generate, then PLN will give you some kind of a discount, which is not, I don't know why, but you don't get 1 kilowatt hour that you were producing. You don't get paid for the 1 kilowatt hour that you're producing. You get credit, but it's not one-to-one credit, right? But nowadays they changed that. They changed it to one-to-one. So if you produce 1 kilowatt hour, then you get credit for 1 kilowatt hour. That's again a step in the right direction, right? The policy that the PLN has put forward gives more incentives, right, for consumers like us, like you yourselves, to put solar panels on the roof. Because now you can see, oh, if I generate 1 kilowatt hour, send it back to PLN, then PLN will give me credit for 1 kilowatt hour. It's a one-to-one, exchange. That's good. And other than that, I also know that, or understand that the process of getting the approval now is faster. I don't know if that's true or not, but at least that was the policy, right? The plan that they put up is that if you plan to get approval to put up solar panels, it should be faster. That's an incentive, right, in the right direction. And then the credits that you receive by producing energy, for example, there is a deadline. There is not a deadline. What do you call it? Like after a while, if you don't use it, then it's gone. But now they extended that time limit, right? So that you can wait for several months before the credits expire. So that's again just several examples of how I think Indonesian government try their best to incentivize consumers to put solar panels as an example. So I believe if you ask about whether or not it is effective and efficient, I don't know. Time will tell. But at least the government is trying hard to. I believe they're trying they're putting in the right direction, right? Steps to again to promote the use of renewable energy, and I think that's great. Okay, so I think that's the answer I could give you for now, and I can only relate it to renewable energy. Other policies, I don't have any knowledge on. There's so many policies they have. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'd like to relate about the previous question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I actually want to ask about the plan of the government to have a conversion from the gas stove into the electric stove. About that plan, right? So is there any challenge with your plan about the implementation of the DC? About DC of your system. If there is any new burden from the stove, the gas stove into the electric stove, which means will be more demand for the resource itself.
That's a very good question. That's one of the things, right, that I believe the DC electricity is laying out the foundation for future homes. Because that's one very good example of how we can easily align any new technology that government is trying to put into residential to improve the use of, or to lessen the use of energy per se, right? Changing from gas to electric stove, for example, you can easily align it with DC because technology from the perspective of technology from technological perspective, if you are using electric stove, then you are actually using high frequency electricity, which is coming from DC. So if you have an AC source, such as what you are having now at home, that AC at 50 hertz, you have to convert it to DC anyways. Then you generate high frequencies to provide the heat for this electric stove. So again, from the technological point of view, inside that stove is actually DC that we convert to high frequency AC. So what if the wall socket is DC? Then you don't need the conversion from AC to DC anymore. Would that be nice? Because then you save, you're not losing energy in the process, right? So to me, the technology that I'm offering, the DC house, fits perfectly into this scheme, right? So,
Okay,
thank you for bringing it up.
So the point is the burden for the electricity consumption will be increased anyway, because regardless whether they use the AC or DC, because when the government imply the electric stove, it will increase the burden of the house itself. So regardless about the AC DC they use. Right?
Oh, you mean the increased load? Yes, but I think it's more convenience, right? And it's less what do you call it? Less it's more safe, I believe, right? To use electric stove than gas, natural gas based stove. So I think that's one of the benefits. And then, of course, by putting electrical stove, then yes, you're gonna use more electricity regardless of whether or not it's DC or AC. However, if you use DC straight from the wall, then you use less energy, right? Yes, both use energy for sure. The same as gas. Gas is also using energy, it's gas energy. But if you compare apple to apple, right? Electric stove provided by AC versus electric stove provided by DC, I would argue that electric stove that is provided by DC power would be using less energy. Therefore, you pay less utility bill.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, for Dr. Aslam, you will answer the question. Sorry, your mic still out. I'm sorry, Dr. Aslam, your mic is still out. Okay, Dr. Aslam. Dr. Aslam. Okay. Out.
Can the moderator unmute him?
Yeah, I have already asked to unmute. Dr. Aslam, your mic still mute.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm mute. I don't think so. Yeah. Again, thanks for the question. I think from this question posed by Malta, I think Malta Raga. I think so. So roughly there are 4 questions indirectly. 4 questions. One thing, I know he or she. I think Mr. So asking about the potential kind, 3 potential kind of limit, ecological limit, the physical scale of economic activity. There are no limits to the economic welfare to be derived from the growth of economic activity, and the other social limit to economic growth, especially in the case of developed country, for example, like in Malaysia or in Indonesia. And the last question asking about the link between limit to growth and sustainable development, which is linked with the ecological reality issue in a developed country. For the first one, think about the link with ecological, physical scale of economic activity. Physical scale, roughly, we can say, for example, let's say, just make a simple example, just in case of Malaysia, for example. So in case of Malaysia, for example, say 1960, for example, the government emphasized on manufacturing industry. So we develop what we call industrial zone quite extensive, and also then we invited, for example, multinational corporation to run our to stimulate and to develop our manufacturing industry and so on. But the issue is, for example, yes, economic activity expand and so on. This is physical, right? The physical production, the growth, and so on expand. But the issue is, for example, the impact, the negative impact also, the negative impact for the extensive manufacturing sector. So I mean, first thing, for example, those industries located near to the river or close to the, for example, ocean, for example, or sea. So the issue will be, for example, will affect, for example, the river, and also if there's, for example, the waste of industry flow into the river, then will cause, for example, the level of chemical, for example, mercury or whatever kind of or toxic which throw into the river will affect the ecological system. That means the animal live in the river and also the ocean will be affected. So the issue, for example, so if let's say, for example, the animal live in those water, for example, consume those kind of toxic or chemical, whatever. So if let's say the human what call eat the things will affect them. So there's a link. So the physical of economic activity, if let's say I spend too much, will affect indirectly ecological system. But one thing, those, for example, this happen in case in Malaysia, for example, there are few, for example, certain area which have, for example, where factory, for example, or located close to river, and so close to, for example, sea, for example. So they were, yes, affected. So they were quite extensive. This one from one area, for example, in case Selangor, for example, somewhere in Kajan, the other one in Pasir Gudang, in case of and also the other one in Penang also. So the river, the water is quite nice, now turned to black or green, and also the other one, the waste throw into the river, and also the sea, and so on. So that kind of thing, extensive development of physical or, for example, manufacturing industry, yes, will affect in long term, will affect ecological system. This will happen in case in Japan. As in Japan, before 1980s, the one of the major industry in major industrial area in Japan is Hiroshima. So before 1980, for example, seeing the most waste of manufacturing flow into the river. So the cost, for example, previously the fishermen able to fish along the coastal area in Hiroshima, but since after 1960 until 1980, there is no live animal live in the coastal area. But when the Japanese government noticed that, for example, this can happen, so the Japanese government introduced a law. That means they try to, for example, a law. They mean to reduce what call reduce the waste of industry flow into the ocean. But now since 1980s, now since the Japanese government implemented the policy and the law, so now the fishermen can catch the fish along the coastal area because the water is clean now. So that's one thing. They want one of the negative impact. If let's say, for example, extensive physical economic activity took place close to the ecological system, for example, river and also the ocean. So yes, there will be impact in long term happen. So the other one is linked with the economic welfare, growth of economic welfare. The economic welfare limit to economic welfare to derive from the growth. Normally economic welfare linked to the pollution, for example, normally linked to pollution. So extensive economic development, either for example industrial development, and also the other one. See, if let's say one area developed as a industrial zone, indirectly in future that area will become a city. They mean the housing area will develop, and also the other infrastructure development, so the road and blah blah, and so and the number of automobile on the road will expand, increase. Then indirectly in future will increase. For example, pollution in air, and so pollution in water. So yes, the welfare of the people may decrease in term of to receive or to get the clean air, and also to get the clean water. So yes, I could welfare here. So yes, and there is a high correlation between the expansion of economic activity and the welfare. The welfare here we refer, if let's say we link on pollution, air pollution and water pollution. For example, in case, for example, in Malaysia, for example, if let's say, for example, the water getting dirty, or the chemical or toxic from industry flow into the river. Then the government have to shut down the water catchment area. Go there to clean the water. After they clean the water, clean the river, then able to supply the water. So this impact that. This impact there. The second one, the social limit to economic growth. Now, social limit roughly. So social limit, we need to see between, for example, consumption of a certain good and so on. So if it's an economic expand, so they mean certain quarters of people, for example, the rich people, and normally rich people getting more riches, and also low income group, maybe the size of low income group expand and so on. So they mean the consumption of good. First thing, the consumption of the good. So they mean if let's say economic expand, indirectly production of a largely good expand, and also on the other hand, production of a necessary good may decline. So if let's say necessary decline, so will affect people of lower income group in terms of buying and consume necessary good, for example, like a rice, blah blah, and so on. And the other one also, for example, certification, for example, so will reduce certification of people. For example, this also will affect certification in terms of consuming goods, and the other one certification, for example. So if let's say, for example, area economic expand, for example, then for example like Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur previously 1960 and now 1980. Previously, people stay in Kuala Lumpur less than 1 million. Now people stay in Kuala Lumpur more than 3 million. That means the area getting congested now, the transport, for example, on road, people, for example, the social cost to people to moving around, for example, from house to office, and also the cost increasing, social cost increasing. Then this social cost increase may affect people life. For example, like myself, I'm working in the Malaya, close to KL, so I'm staying in Shah Alam, 30 kilometers from the office. So every day I'm travel, go and come back 60 kilometers. So I have to go through the traffic jam. There is a social cost. Those people who living in a big city, they will face that kind of thing. So this kind of thing. So if let's say, for example, this kind of thing will decrease. For example, the social value, and also will increase on the other hand, will increase the social benefit, they will decrease the social benefit, but on the other hand, will increase the social cost. And the last page is, for example, the link between the limit to growth and sustainable development. So this one, as I mentioned in earlier in the lecture, for example, there's a limit there. The main limit, for example, here, those countries which rely on primary commodities, in case of Malaysia, and also in case of Indonesia, some basically some of GDP or production in the economy, and so GDP linked with primary commodity. But in case of Malaysia, reliance on the primary commodity is roughly decreased now, but compared to Indonesia, is increasing. Primary commodity, one of the main sector that contributed to GDP growth to Indonesia, but in case in Malaysia, we are getting less now. So our more GDP depend on manufacturing industry and also services industry. So primary industry, for example, we are contribution of a primary industry to grow is less. But however, so if let's say, for example, we look on sustainable development, roughly we look on natural resources, how the government conserve, and also, for example, conserve and to ensure that the development will not decrease, decrease, for example, production of natural resources. But a good example in case of Malaysia, for example, forest. We have a big forest. Same goes to Indonesia. We have big forest, for example, in Peninsular Malaysia and also in Borneo Island, we have Sabah and Sarawak there. So the issue is forestation, forest. So we are, for example, we are the speed. For example, we are the government do not take care. For example, those company give a license or concession to cut tree in the forest. So the issue is that even the government give a license, for forestation to certain company, but the issue, the company do not replant the tree. So if let's say do not replant the tree, so if let's say for example, let's say it's a heavy rainfall, for example, so may cause a disaster. The disaster to the surrounding area, those people living close to the logging activity. So for example, it happened in case Malaysia, for example, there are few times there few city in Pahang, and so the other one in Kelantan, for example. So the rainfall, so everything will drag to the valley. So those people staying in the valley, all their houses, their physical asset destroyed, damaged. And also the damage cost not 1,000, a few million. Some, and last 2 months, saying the damage caused by the heavy rain and also due to forestation, deforestation more than R1 billion. So the issue there. That means the government need, for example, in terms of there's a limit. As I mentioned, for example, natural resources government need to take care. For sustain population is growing, and so demand for land, demand for everything is increased. So government need a policy, for example, to halt, for example, how much they can, for example, to produce and blah blah and so on. So why to need to take care or to make the worker to take care of the welfare of people, And the other one, another big issue here, for example, not only for current for current demand, but also government need to take care for the future demand, the future generation. So that's a bigger issue. So, but one thing, since I have mentioned earlier, for example, since the economy was run by capitalists, so some, and also the government, also the executive, the prime minister, also maybe some of the country, for example, those people in the government is controlled, or there's a link between the politician and also with the capitalist. They mean the welfare will be compromised. The welfare of people roughly compromised. So if let's say in the news you see some country, for example, there's the bad weather cause of bad damage, then it must be a link between the capitalist and so the politician. So normally policy maker, they the one issue the policy. They the one develop and implemented the policy. So they should be blamed. So I think that's the answer. I think which I can give. There's a link between ecological system, the limit to grow, and link with the sustainable development, and also link to the ecological system. So we can see the indicator, for example, to look on ecological factor. Just look in just for example the pollution, the level of the air pollution, and also the level of river pollution, and so on. So if the level of pollution increase, and so emission of the carbon dioxide increase, that means something to do. That means the economic activity has caused welfare to people. I think that's all. I'm able to answer the things. I hope my answer is what call meet the demand by the sponsor, by those people ask the question. I think Mr. Malga, Malta Raga.
Okay. Okay, thank you for Dr. Aslam for the answer. All right, we have the two last question. The first one from Mr. Alif.
Renewable technology reduce energy use.
The question
However,
is,
it is inversely proportional to the cost incurred for the technology. How to overcome this?
I'm sorry. I think the question is for Professor Taufik. Yeah, he changed the subject of the question.
Oh, this is
Yeah. I'm sorry.
question for Taufik.
Yeah. I will ask the question for Professor Taufik. Yeah, he revised the question. One of the issue of renewable technology is often reduced energy use. However, it is inversely proportional to the cost incurred for the technology. How to overcome this? Thank you. Maybe we can directly go to the second question from Mr. Faisal that has raised his hand. Yeah, you can turn on your microphone, Mr. Faisal.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question, but firstly, I'd like to thank you to Mr. Zeqi Yasin for the opportunity and the insightful talk for the two lecture today, Dr. Aslam and Professor Taufik. But right here, I want to ask my question to Professor Taufik. Because I was interested about this renewable energy field in the environmental climate change field. There's a lot of renewable energy source like as mentioned before, like tidal wave, like hydro micro energy, or solar panel power, etc., etc. But one thing I concerned here was about the storage of the energy, because a lot of innovation today are using DC power, so it was required to use a storage device in case this was a battery. So my question is there a battery have a recyclable life? Because as far as I know, there's a single use or rechargeable batteries, such as lithium or polymer kind of batteries. They are recyclable, but as far as I know, there's still few of the recycling facility to this kind of battery. So there's the question I'd like to ask: is there a viable facility to recycle this battery? Because in the future, we use a lot of kind of this battery, but there's no facility to accommodate the recycling things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Professor Taufik, you may answer the question.
Thank you for the two questions are very great, good questions. Well, let me try to answer the one from Mr. Alif. The cost, right? It is inversely proportional to the cost. That's a good point. Yeah, really good point. However, we need to also understand that as technology advances, the trend is cost will also decreases, right? As an example, I remember from statistics that solar panel, that's just an example. Solar panel cost about $77 per watt back in 1977. That's how I remember. So around 1977, imagine the cost of solar panel per watt, that was $77 US dollars. How much is it right now? 30 cents, right? So yes, it is true that the more you put in renewable energy, then the more cost you have to put, initially. But then this cost keeps decreasing, and that's the same with, for example, wind energy, right? You can actually buy right now, if you like to put a small wind turbine for your house, you can actually buy one for um, around $250 for 400 watts. So that's about what? That's about maybe 67 cents per watt or something like that, right? So you can see it's getting cheaper and cheaper. So yes, it is cost to us, but then the cost keeps decreasing. So it's not quite inversely proportional. I mean, it's there is a cost, but it's same thing for everything else. There's a cost for putting up AC system. But what's good is that as technology advances, as more and more people are using renewable energy, then they produce more and more of these products, then of course the cost will decrease. Not only that, we also have to look at um, the break even, right? The break even of these technologies. For example, solar panels in the US, the break even would be about 8 years. So it takes about 8 years to break even. And beyond that is pure, what do you call it? Benefits, basically, right? Because it's already past the break even. So, so I agree that it is cost, it is going to take some initial capital to purchase renewable energy, but the break even becomes less and less number of years because the cost is getting less and less. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So that's the answer to the first question. And then the second question was related to another good point, battery, energy storage. No doubt it is a problem. And unfortunately, energy storage is the slowest the slowest pace of technological development compared to others, right? It's very slowly developing, but with the increased use of electric vehicles, you can see nowadays that the technology for batteries is becoming better and better. However, keep in mind also, who asked that question before? Faisal, right? Also, Faisal, keep in mind that it doesn't matter whether or not you use DC or AC. If it's off grid, okay, if it's away from the grid, you have to use battery, right? So it doesn't matter if you use DC or AC, you have to use a battery, because if it is off grid, you have to be able to store energy, right? So regardless, right, regardless of the type of technology you are using for off grid, you still have to use battery. Now for hybrid AC and DC for urban homes, for houses in the big cities, for example, battery is an optional, right? You could have the battery as an energy storage, but that's an extra component because you are tied to the grid, right? In houses in urban areas, you tie to PLN, right? So therefore, you don't need any energy storage. If you have the money, of course, you can always add the battery in your house. But if you don't, then you don't need to, right? So, and then, yeah, in terms of technology, as I said earlier, are there any technology, battery technology that that keeps improving and keeps um, that pushes but promotes, right, the use of renewable energy even more by having more sustainable type of energy storage? The answer is yes and no. uh, so far, what I've known is that for low scale battery, meaning low power batteries, I don't think there is any technology yet that has like a very long lifetime of battery life. However, for utility scale, big scale battery, right? Huge. You can check this out. There is a technology called um, the flow battery, flow redox battery. Go ahead and Google it. Flow redox battery. The technology was developed in Japan, and it is a big battery. So it is used for utility scale, PLN, right? Basically, PLN will be using it as the centralized battery. So go ahead and check it out. That technology has been developed for almost 20 years. So it's a flow battery, it's a liquid battery. And the claim is that this battery has infinite lifetime. That's the claim. Meaning you don't have to recycle the battery. It's gonna work forever. That's the claim, right? And how do I know this? Because this technology has been implemented in the US. I'm very fortunate because I was actually part of the group that took a look at this technology while I was working in San Diego, PLN in San Diego, and they put, they installed this big battery, flow battery from Japan, from Mitsubishi. No, is it Mitsubishi? No, it's not. I don't remember what now, but it's a big battery, and it's supposed to be it's supposed to have a very long lifetime. Okay, so it will be good if we could somehow rescale or scale down, right, the technology into a smaller battery. But I don't know if that's possible. I'm not an expert in battery, but that's the answer to you. Unfortunately, for low power batteries, I don't think we have the technology yet that has battery that lasts for a long time. But for utility scale, big scale, yes, there is a technology that is claimed to be able to run for a long time. So go ahead and Google, Mr. Faisal, go ahead and Google this technology called flow redox, redox flow or flow redox, REDOX, flow battery, right? It's a very interesting technology. And there are some other efforts right now where people are trying to use different type of battery for a lower scale, but they're not out commercialized yet. But as I said, once we have these EVs going around anywhere, then I'm sure battery technology will be, taking off pretty soon. Right? So that's my answer to your question. Hopefully that satisfies, your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Professor Taufik for the answer. All right, we have had such interesting discussion and have arrived in the end of our forum today. And thank you for the speakers and all the audience that have attended this online course. We hope you stay healthy and well in this situation. And I'll give back the forum to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Mr. Zeqi. I would like to thank Mr. Zeqi for guiding the course and discussion today. And now we will symbolically hand over the certificate to moderator and speaker, which will be given by the Head of Economic of Development Program, Dr. Herman Cahyo-Diarto, SEMP.
Thank you, Pamasa, for Mr. Ceremony, this event, international virtual course. I want to talk about this. I am pleased to have you, our speaker today, who really have a great competency of our main topics about sustainable natural resources. Thank you for Professor Taufik as lecturer and research for California University. Give a certificate for Mr. Taufik. Once again, thank you, and also for Dr. Aslam as lecturer and research from University of Malaya. Thank you for recording for time to join and share the knowledge with us today. A certificate for Dr. Mohammad Aslam bin Gulam Hassan. Okay. Once again, thank you for our speaker, the first speaker for Dr. Taufik, and second speaker for Dr. Aslam. And I hope we can cooperation again in another things. Thank you very much for my institution, for Professor Taufik and Dr. Aslam. Okay, and give times for Pamasa as Mr. Ceremony. Hello.
Now we're entering the documentation session. To all the participants at Zoom, please activate the camera feature and give your best facial expression. To those in charge of the session, I invite you.
Oh iya, lupa. Huh? lupa.
Slide number 1, 1, 2, 3. Slide number 2, 1, 2, 3. Slide number 3, 1, 2, 3. Slide number 4, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much for your willingness. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't feel like we're at the end of the event. Thank you very much to our speakers today, who were very extraordinary. And thank you also to the participants of the International Virtual Course, Natural Resource as Driven Economic, for taking the time to attend and explore together about this wonderful theme. And don't forget to fill in the second presents link that has been provided by the committee, considering that the presence of the college is a requirement to get an e-certificate. And finally, I'm Aulia Pamasa Setiyantono as the Master of Ceremony. From the deepest of my heart, I do apologize if there are words that are not pleasing in the ceremony. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye to all the participants. See you in the next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam. Thank you for attention, Mr. Taufik.
Thank you so much for
Once
the invite.
again, yeah. Thank you for Dr. Aslam.
Bye-bye.
Once
See you.
again, anytime collaboration with my institution, Prof. Taufik.
Inshallah. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Hope we can see you next time.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Aslam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Dr. Aslam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.